Hope the restaurant's flexible.
I'm leaving at 8. How's that?
Good evening, and welcome to the...
Recording in progress.
Good evening, and welcome to the May 7th, 2025 Yarmouth Planning Board meeting. I am Joanne Crowley, the chair. The public is always welcome to attend. We thank you for coming tonight, in person or via alternate public access provided on the Town of Yarmouth website. Our meetings are generally held on the first and third Wednesdays of the month, but additional meetings are added as necessary. I will begin by taking roll call. Susan Britta.
Here.
Deirdre Gaquin.
Here.
Will Rubenstein.
Here.
Jim Sabin.
Present.
Peter Slovak.
Here.
Ken Smith.
Here.
Joanne Crowley present. Seeing that we have a quorum present, I will now call the meeting to order, and I would ask that you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Of the United States of America and to the republic.
The pledge.
First item on our agenda this evening are our consideration for zoning amendments that we would like to present, perhaps, at the fall special town meeting. These zoning amendments are retail sales of commercial fish, shellfish in residential zoning districts, on-site boat storage in residential zoning districts, and accessory dwelling units, to modify the accessory apartment bylaw to match the state regulations. I'd like to begin by reviewing zoning amendment requests for those of you who may not know how this process works. I'm very pleased to see so many here, so many people interested in probably a couple of these amendments. One is already, the accessory dwelling units amendment has gone through the torture of many public meetings, and then it was overridden by state law, and we now have to come back and rewrite our accessory dwelling unit bylaw to conform with state law. But the other two items on our agenda this evening obviously have generated some public interest, and we're happy to engage with the public, with you, in terms of moving forward to make these changes to the bylaw that satisfy everyone's needs. Zoning amendment requests often come from the public for consideration by the planning board. This evening, I'm going to begin with an overview of what the zoning amendment process is, so that you'll understand how we get from here tonight to special town meeting, which will probably be in November. And then after that, when in fact the state approves our amendments, we can actually enact them and we can move forward with them. And then in addition, I'll review the format for this evening's meeting. So what is the planning board's role in the process for adopting and amending zoning? What do we do? Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40A, is the statute that prescribes procedures as to how we act, how we amend, how we adopt, how we administer, and how we enforce. A zoning bylaw regulates the use, pattern, and appearance of development through zoning districts. We have commercial districts and residential districts. Through dimensional requirements, we call them setbacks, etc. Use requirements, which is primarily why we're here this evening, and other regulations. This evening, we are beginning the process of developing 3 amendments to our current bylaw that will result in changes to our use and dimensional requirements and other provisions, especially related, as I mentioned before, to the accessory dwelling units. Let me review the overview for the process of creating and developing zoning amendments. As put forth by the planning board to be voted on at town meeting, again, between here and November, I presume, is when our special town meeting. This lays out the roadmap that we must follow between now and then. Number one, identify and present an issue within the zoning bylaw. This can come from multiple sources. It comes from us, it comes from you, it comes from business owners, it comes from other residents. The planning board then reviews and develops draft revisions to address the issue that's been presented to us for discussion at multiple public meetings. All of our meetings are public, and these amendments will be discussed over time extensively between now and our special town meeting. Once the planning board is satisfied and town council has reviewed the proposed amendment, we hold a mandatory public hearing. After the public hearing and deliberations on the comments we receive during the public hearing, we either recommend or do not recommend the particular article with or without modifications. After the public hearing, the planning board then presents the amendment to the select board for their review and comment, and the select board then votes to recommend or not recommend the modification or the article. The amendment is included in the article for town meeting warrant to be voted on by registered voters. If the article passes, the changes are submitted to the Attorney General's office within 30 days of town meeting. They then must review it and get back to us within 90 days to say, yes, we accept it, or no, we don't. Amendments are typically valid on the day of town meeting unless they are not approved by the AG's office. It should be noted that the planning board does not have the authority to give relief for issues requiring a zoning amendment, which must be approved through town meeting only. The format for this evening's meeting: each zoning amendment will be handled individually. We'll start with the staff overview, which will be provided by our town planner, Kathy Williams. We will request any proponents for the particular item to come to the microphone, identify themselves, and explain what they would like to be able to do. Please refrain from any lengthy explanations or grievances and concentrate on what you would like to be able to do or accomplish to help us move this particular item forward. This will help the board identify what we might need to change within the zoning bylaw and get us started on drafting amendments. The planning board members will then offer their comments and questions, and then we'll have an opportunity for follow-up from comments from you. Please note that these are initial discussions, and further discussions and drafts will be developed over the summer in preparation for the fall special town meeting, typically held at the end of October or early November. So let us begin with the first zoning amendment that's on the agenda this evening: retail sales of commercial fish, shellfish, in residential zoning districts. Kathy, I'd like you to run through an overview for us on this, sure. And then I will ask any proponents to identify themselves and would ask you to come to the table and speak to us. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. Typically what I do is on these issues is I write a little memo to the board, just kind of giving a little summary and a little background so they get a better understanding of what the issues are. So I think it's come to the town's attention that lobsters were being sold commercially, licensed fishermen on a residential property, when inquiries were made to the town about some signs that were located around town. These types of off-premises signs for commercial uses are not something that's allowed for any business in our zoning bylaw. And when we did additional research and confirmation with town council, it turns out that the building commissioner determined that this is an unlawful use because it was never allowed in the zoning bylaw all through the years that we've had a zoning bylaw to have this type of use in a residential neighborhood. This determination was upheld by the Zoning Board of Appeals, and they have a decision that's been attached to your information there, and a variance request for a B4 forestry, fishing, and hunting to allow for retail sales was also denied as it didn't meet the variance criteria. So hopefully, tonight, we'll get some further insights and information from you guys that helps the planning board consider potential zoning amendments. Some of the things that the board might want to consider is maybe some special provisions, because we are asking for commercial use in a residential zoning district. So maybe we want to limit it to people who are commercially licensed fishermen with a commercially retail license. Maybe they can only sell their catch, so it doesn't turn into some type of wholesaling and a big operation in a residential zoning district. We may want to have some limitations on this type of signage and when it can go out and that type of thing to let people know that they're open for business, but not to be something that's invasive into the residential neighborhood. And typically, because of this type of use, we might require a special permit. So you'd go to the Zoning Board of Appeals, you'd explain what it is, your neighbors would be notified, they could come and say, well, I have little concerns about this, you could say, well, I can mitigate it this way, and hopefully you get a special permit, which may have some conditions on it. Some conditions may include, like, maybe some specific hours of operation that might be tailored specifically to your particular use. So that is my understanding of the situation, and hopefully we'll get some more understanding from you this evening.
Thank you, Kathy. So I'd like to ask anyone in the audience who is a proponent of this to come forward and identify themselves.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Jonathan Poloni. I am an attorney with Senni and Associates in Brewster, and I am not appearing here on behalf of my... Is it on?
Could you just repeat your name again?
Sure. My name's Jonathan Poloni, and I'm an attorney with Senni and Associates. I'm here on behalf of John Tolley, who's the lobsterman who's been the subject of the zoning enforcement. Just one quick point, just of clarification. There have been 2 hearings in the zoning enforcement. I'm not going to dwell on that, but I just wanted to clarify that there was never a determination about the grandfathering status. That was the hope that we were going to bring to the second hearing, which there was never a discussion about that. It was dismissed for other reasons. So I just wanted to point that out. To answer your question, Madam Chairman, what Mr. Tolley would like to do, and I believe he will come and speak also, but he obviously wants to be able to continue his commercial retail of lobsters at his home. It's been his home business for a very long time, over 50 years, and he would like to continue to be able to do that. I think that it's encouraging some of the language that has been pointed out in the staff report. I think a lot of that makes sense, and I think that's the direction that we would like to see things go in as you consider this further. A couple of ideas I can throw out there. One idea, and John may speak about this more, is to simply explicitly provide for grandfathering of this specific use that predates 1982. There was a lot of materials that we were able to pull together in preparing for the second hearing in front of the ZBA, in the conversations that I had with the building commissioner at that time. When you go through the zoning bylaws, going all the way back to the beginning of zoning in Yarmouth, there is this express provision for the handling of fish in the residential district specifically. That also allowed for the sale of those fish in the residential district. And that was where we started to take this argument around this being a grandfathered use, a protected use, that really goes back to beginnings of zoning in Yarmouth. So I think that would be one way that you could address it, is by just recognizing that there is this long history of lobstering and fishing in Yarmouth that has a precedent, and it would also serve to mitigate against some of the concerns that the staff has raised around, really opening this up. If you are making it so that someone has to show that they've been doing this before 1982, then you're really limiting, I think, pretty significantly the number of people who are going to be able to meet that criteria. So that would obviously satisfy us. That is the goal that we're looking for. We meet that criteria. And I think there's evidence to support that in how the zoning bylaws developed. The critical date in 1982 being the date when the zoning bylaw changed, and the provision for the handling of fish in the residential district was removed, and reorganized the zoning bylaw at that time to to create these other categories, so it was moved out of, and they may have just eliminated the retail use at that time. But there were a couple of changes that happened then. 1982 was kind of a significant time. Alternatively, commercial uses are presently recognized in the residential district. As you know, the B4 category for fishing, forestry, and hunting falls in the agricultural use category. And that is a use that is allowed in every district except, I think, for the B3 district. And so this doesn't apply to the fishing, forestry, or hunting classification, but the other two agricultural classifications, raising produce and raising livestock, both come with a footnote 7 attached. And footnote 7 allows for retail sale when you get a special permit. So it is possible to do commercial retail in a residential district on a special permit for certain uses. That is something that, you could go that route and kind of just add footnote 7 to the fishing use. I don't know if that raises kind of more of a question about whether you have to be fishing from your property in order to be able to take advantage of footnote 7. But there's some connection there. And it does also relate to the special permit provisions that the staff was talking about. You could also create a new footnote that builds in a specific provision for retail sales for fishing in the residential district. And that could be an opportunity to bring in these other concerns around limiting it to personal catch that you're then selling. And if you wanted to address sign regulations through that, that might be possible. I think one of the questions that you might want to address is around, specifying certain things in the zoning bylaw or just leaving this as a broad category for the zoning board to address. So there are certain conditions that you could build into the zoning bylaw that if somebody met them, then they would have kind of a by right ability to do that. And alternatively, if it just was left to, you got to get a special permit, then you can do this. You're creating the opportunity for that to happen, but you're giving it to the ZBA to make a determination around that. So those are kind of two paths that I can see happening. Myself and my client, I think, would be more in favor of a direct approach, which I think having that explicit protected use designation would just really clearly make that so that there wasn't a need for any further review. My one final point would be that you could eliminate the footnote 7 and create a whole new category for retail sales of agricultural products and include fishing in that. And this would be, the farmer's market was added in as H3A underneath kind of food stores as a special category. You could come up with an H3B for agricultural retail as a specific category that would be broadly applicable throughout all the zoning districts except for the B3 district. And you could, define things particularly within that category. So I think those are kind of the ideas that I have about how we might approach this problem. One question that I had, which you may have already answered, was there doesn't seem to be any immediate relief for this season. And that is also a concern that I'm trying to work through an alternative track. But I also was wanting to open that up to you if you had any thoughts about how John may approach this season, which is coming up next month and will run for a couple of months after that. I don't think even if, with the special town meeting that he's still going to lose the season this year. So I don't know if there is any way for you to recommend anything about the enforcement action that's happened, but that's obviously something that we're concerned about as well. This is his livelihood. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
John Tolley, 23 Iroquois Boulevard, West Yarmouth. It's all about me, obviously.
Welcome.
So this is what the point is. The handling of fish and the sale in a residential area started in 1947, because I went all the way back to the very first town meeting. And when it switched over was in 1982. Well, my grandfather, who lives over, everyone must know where the Bass Hole is in Yamaport, sold lobsters from there from 1930 to 1972. Not just lobsters, it was fish and scallops. He had a sign out on historical, the Old Kings Highway, right at the corner of Center Street, when they spelled it the right way, C-E-N-T-R-E instead of C-E-N-T-E-R. And he had a sign out there that said native lobsters. So he did that from that time to that time. Then my father, when he was a kid, he grew up there also until he was like in his late 20s when he married my mother. But he also sold, from that same premises, sold seaworms, clams, striped bass, lobsters, etc. So then when he married my mother, moved over to West Yarmouth in 1957. My father sold them from 1957 until when he passed away, basically. And I've lived there my whole life. So I've lived there from 1959 to today. And I've sold lobsters, I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to lie to you, I've sold millions of pounds of fish from my home. And lobsters, crabs, scallops, conch. And I don't sell to people like on the Cape. Most of the places I sell to come from off the Cape. They're from Canada, a lot of Chinese from New York, Maine, and so they come and pick the product up at my house, and I've been doing that ever since I was 16. That's when I had my first license. I had my first fishing license when I was 16, and I had a scallop license, so I went fishing and scalloping. I sold fish to my teachers and stuff in school, and scallops and blah, blah, blah. And I had a lobster license for a student lobster license that I sold the lobsters also. And so I've been selling all that stuff since then. No one seems to complain because I've sold to building inspectors. Forrest White told me that, John, you cannot have a sign there, but you can sell the fish because you're grandfathered into it. So if no one said anything for 50 years, that's just me 50 years, and no one said anything about my father, my grandfather, except for one person. And the one person, you probably don't know who it is, but the building commissioner told me. It was a female Yarmouth cop. They complained about my sign up on Route 28. Had nothing, didn't complain about me selling the lobsters. It was a sign. This is how this all started, from that sign being out there. So, but I have had signs on Southsea Ave, which is a road right next to my house, and a sign in front of my house. So basically, I've been doing this all this time. I've sold to cops. I sell to everyone. I've sold to everyone. You know, I mean, that's why you have so many people that are supporting me. I mean, they're supporting me all over the country. You can't believe it. I've had people call me from almost every state in the union saying they're supporting me. So, you know, I feel like my cause is there, but it's like, now, from what I can see, am I not going to be able to sell the lobsters from my house this year because I have to wait all the way to the fall? Or, of course, I could sell them up on the main street. But that's not I've always sold them from the house, and that's what I want to continue to do. I've always done it. I mean, and that's what grandfathering's all about. And the thing is, if you say it has to be before 1982, you don't have to worry about anything, because I'm the only person. There's no other lobstermen left in Yarmouth. Yarmouth. And you don't have to continue it and say shell fishing, because you can't sell shellfish. You can't. You don't know this, but it's a state regulation. You cannot sell shell fishermen, like if you caught, well, conch is different, but if you caught like clams and little necks and that type of stuff, you can't sell them. You can't sell them from your premises. You have to sell them to a retail or wholesale dealer. So basically, so I'm the only lobsterman left in town, and we love you. So once I get done, guess what? The history of lobstermen is kaput for the town of Yarmouth, which is pretty sad, but that's what the truth is. No person wants their kid to become a fisherman nowadays because over-regulation. Oh, everything's overregulated. Now, up until about 3 years ago, I had a sea bass license, a striped bass license, a scup license, a conch license. I sold all those things because they regulate you out of making any money. So I'm 66 years old, so I'm a senior citizen, and basically I just want to sell a few lobsters until I die, and then you don't have to worry about anything ever again. It's kind of simple. I mean, it's simple. It's like, I don't know what else to say. I'm grandfathered into it, but they try to make it sound like I'm not. I mean, come on. I'm what the whole grandfathering clause is. I am grandfathered. So,
Grandfather.
no, my grandfather, he's been gone for a long time. But, like I say, my grandfather and my father were turning over in their grave because they've been selling this. They sold the stuff their whole lives. That's what Yarmouth was all about back then. And this is what people don't know. When my father was a little boy, and his brother Walter, and my grandfather was Walter Sr., when they went fishing, guess what? They rode. They hadn't invented the outboard motor to go, so they rode out striped bass fishing, lobstering. So people don't realize that. That's how it started out. So, and that law from 1947, they were still rowing at that time, rowing out to the traps. So it's like that's what the grandfather and part's all about. I mean, it comes from way back then. But no one would believe you if you say they rode out to traps, but they did. And so basically, my lawyer said the other part for me, and I hope you guys consider changing the bylaw, because all you have to do is make it simple. Anything before 1982, you're golden, and then that's me, and everyone else is either. You got to remember, they've either died, they've retired, or they are ill. A couple of lobstermen are sick with cancer. They sold their licenses, so the only one left in town is me.
History books.
Yep. Tolly's history lesson,
Yep.
Thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tolley. Would anyone else like to speak?
John.
My name is Jerry O'Connor. I live in Yarmouthport. I love John's story. I love it. I grew up here in Yarmouth. I love the Cape. This is the place I came home to when I punched out of the Marine Corps. I love this guy's story. And I just ask that the town can do the right thing. For the life of me, I don't know how it got to this. It should never have got to this. But please, guys, do the right thing. Help John. Thank you.
Tracy Bird from Yarmouthport, born and raised in Yarmouthport. We're losing our generations of Cape Codders. Yarmouth has lost its way, but we can still get it back. We need to start supporting all our agriculture, our cranberry bogs, our fishermen, our lobstermen. We have to make Yarmouth great again. It is time to stop this ridiculous, let him do his season, and let's make Yarmouth great again. We're all leaving. We're all leaving. We're having families that aren't going to start sticking around. We're all leaving. You got to help us out here. It's an eye-opener for all of us, and it's shame on us Yarmouth people that let this happen for so long. Let's make Yarmouth great again. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak?
My name is Steve Ferguson. I'm a neighbor of John's. I've lived in the neighborhood since 1962. My folks bought seafood from Fred and bought it from John. It's a shame that it's got to this point, and I reiterate all those other statements. So give them a chance.
Sally Johnson, West Yarmouth, Meadowbrook Road. I don't understand how one person made such chaos out of a simple situation.
National chaos.
Huge. He's doing nothing wrong. He has been doing it for decades. You're taking a livelihood away from someone. his means of living in this town. The other woman who spoke, we have lost our way. It is insane that it has gotten to this point. I don't get how one single person could make such chaos for a sign. It's a sandwich board sign. Big deal. Eliminate them. You know what? There's ways to advertise and make it simple, but let him do what's right. It's his livelihood. It's not like he's going to be here for 150 years. He's a senior citizen.
Give me about 4 more.
I'll give you 20. But it's simple. It's very, very simple. Yarmouth has become very chaotic. There's way more important issues to deal with. This is too simple to make it so ridiculous. Do the right thing.
Certainly.
Sorry, but is this whole signage thing, it's only up there for like maybe a couple of hours, if that. Some days he doesn't even have the sign out. Depends on his catch. It could be out for an hour. Depends if he sells it all out. If we're looking at signage and businesses advertising, you better take a look all the way down 28. And you better take a look all the way down 6-8.
I'd like,
and you better take a look.
excuse me, if I may, when someone's speaking, I would like for them to have the opportunity to speak without interruption. Thank you.
And you should take a look down all these major roads, West Yarmouth Road. All these businesses are advertising. And he's not advertising 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I do appreciate you all actually writing things down. And I appreciate you saying, asking questions and hearing us and not kicking us out. And I appreciate the notes that you've been taking. And I appreciate you saying, God, I can't stand these people. I appreciate you not saying that on mic. And that we do appreciate you all sitting here, taking the time and actually listening. And John, your dad would be proud of you, like the rest of us are.
We have some people who are who are joining us remotely. And I'd like
Ari Bargill.
Ari Bargill.
First name I
Good evening. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have my camera on, but it's not showing. But in any event, my name is Ari Bargill. I'm an attorney with the Institute for Justice. We're a national nonprofit public interest law firm. We're one of the groups that has been in contact with John, and we originally reached out to the Zoning Board of Appeals before his hearing a few weeks ago. We work with local governments nationwide to amend their local zoning codes to make localities more receptive to home-based businesses and historic businesses like John's. We also sue local governments, but that's not why I'm here this afternoon. But we view this as an opportunity both for John and for the town to make their laws and regulations more receptive to at-home and home-based businesses. These types of businesses aren't new or specific to Yarmouth. Localities nationwide have home-based business codes, just like Yarmouth does. And the right way to go about doing this is to identify whatever legitimate health and safety concerns exist and to regulate those things, those externalities, appropriately. So if you have concerns about parking or ingress and egress, you regulate that. If you have concerns about signage, you can regulate that, consistent with the First Amendment. And you can, if you have concerns about the types of things that are being sold, you can regulate that, as John talked about, consistent with state law, which imposes a ton of restrictions on the types of products that can be sold. But categorical prohibitions on home sales or home-based businesses, which are totally unrelated to these concerns about health and safety, are irrational and unconstitutional. And so too are irrational distinctions, like allowing a farmer's market, but not allowing lobster sales for a couple of hours a day. So again, this is an opportunity for Yarmouth to not just allow John to operate, but to make Yarmouth a more pro-business place to live. You've already heard a lot of testimony from folks who are concerned about the old ways being regulated out of existence, and that Yarmouth is becoming a more and more difficult place to live and to thrive. And so I think, of course, John needs to be allowed to operate, but I think this is also an opportunity for the town to take a hard look at what it's been doing over the last few years and consider whether it's still working for the people of Yarmouth. And IJ is willing to work with you to do that. Thank you.
Two other names, but I don't know who the two other names are. Oh, sorry, Joe Glenn is next.
Joe Glenn?
Hi, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Joe.
Good evening. My question goes more to process in history. I've heard it said a number of times that it shouldn't have got this far, and not just by the people who support John, but members of the town administration. And they're right. It shouldn't have got this far. But the problem is that the process is about people who are abusing their power, the power that's vested in the people of Yarmouth. Yarmouth Town Meeting is the oldest form of democracy in the world, and it started right here. And James Otis, when we talk about history and we talk about eliminating these things, we're eliminating not only the history of Yarmouth, we're eliminating the history of the country. James Otis was the one who said taxation without representation is tyranny. And Thomas Jefferson used his comments about life, liberty, and property. And that's what we're talking about here. Life, liberty, and property. And he used that, and he put it in the Declaration of Independence. Sam Adams said about James Otis, who was from here, who represented Cape Cod, represented Yarmouth in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, in the Plymouth Bay Colony, in the Massachusetts legislature, and helped form the Massachusetts Constitution, which was the forebearer of the U.S. Constitution. So this is more than just John Tolley. John Tolley's a friend of mine. John Tolley's father was a friend of mine. And it irks me to no end that the history of this town, and it's being used against them of all people. You guys know that I've run for a lot of things in this town, and I hold 2 positions, elected positions now. And either John Tolley, his father, or both have signed my papers for every single one. And so it bothers me to no end, and you can probably hear it in my voice, that they are the ones that are getting the use of the government is abusing them. And you have Mattakees on your agenda tonight, which includes the Mattakees Middle School and the M.E. Small. And I just want to say one thing. If you looked across out the door to your right and the audience's left, to the John Simpkins School. John Simpkins was another legislator and is in Congress, and he's buried here. He died in Washington, D.C. While in Congress, but he's buried right here in Woodside in Yarmouth. Okay, the John Simpkins School and the Marguerite E. Small is named after Marguerite E. Small. Well, guess where she taught? She taught at the John Simpkins School. In 1935 she started. Well, if anybody in that room can raise their hand if they had someone close to them that was born in 1930 and would have started school at the John Simpkins, raise your hand. And I bet you see John, I can't see the audience now, but I bet you see John Tolley raise his hand, because John Tolley's father was one of Marguerite Small's first students. He was 6 years old. She was a second grade teacher in 1936. And John Simpkins was our only school. It went all the way up to 12th grade. So for 12 years, he was in that small building with Marguerite E. Small. That's history, and that's history that we're losing. So we might be thinking that we're just messing around with a business, and I don't think that it's the planning board's problem. I don't think that you are responsible for it. I think that there are people who are getting paid that could have circumvented and solved this problem before it became an issue. So I thank you for your time, and John, stick with them, and you got everybody behind you.
Thank you, Mr. Glenn. Christopher Guerin?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yes, thanks so much. Yes, I am here to speak in support of Mr. Tolley and his attorney's recommendations for the special election amendments, but specifically, the town must permit him, Mr. Tolley, to sell his lobsters this summer season. This has become a public relations disaster that may affect Yarmouth's historic legacy as a Cape Cod fishing town. It's been in the Boston media, it's on social media, it's national. It's going to affect tourism. Yarmouth is hurting. Mr. Tolley is a businessman, and if he loses income from the busy season, it'll hurt him. He may not be here, next year he'll be bankrupt supposedly. But businesses are hurting with the construction of the sewer and other issues. The businesses are hurting. They are relying on a strong summer season to survive. And the tourists are going to turn off to Yarmouth if Mr. Tolley, is not allowed to sell his lobsters this summer. And I just would say thank you to the board here. Again, I appreciate your attempts to amend the law, but specifically, please work out something so he can sell his lobsters this summer. Thank you so much.
More hands, Madam Chair.
I don't think we have anyone else on remote.
Nope.
Anyone else from the?
Can I just say something?
Yes, please, Mr. Tolley.
Margaret E. Small told me that my father was her favorite student. She picked him up every day and brought him to school and brought him home over in Yamapport from John Simpkins. Very good.
Madam Chair, Margaret E. Small also told me I was her favorite student.
Probably.
Seeing that there are no other public comments, either remotely or here in the room, I would like to ask the board to offer their questions. I would like to make a suggestion, Kathy. The attorney, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name already. Jonathan, could you submit something in writing to us with regard to those suggested note changes and other recommendations that you might suggest for the word, where in the zoning bylaw you think? I mean, as an attorney, we appreciate your expertise, and if you could help us along, that would be a helpful. It would be helpful to us. Kathy, of course, is our expert on this, and she probably has some ideas on where a starting point is.
Some of them was similar to yours. I was thinking
Yes.
more footnotes, but they certainly had a lot of ideas, and I appreciate you bringing them to us. It's very helpful.
I won't interrupt too much.
So I'd like to start with Mr. Saban. Do you have any comments or questions, our vice chair?
Yes, Madam Chair, I don't know how I pulled the short straw, but I'll go first. First, full disclosure, I've known Johnny Tolley since we were about 2 years old. Well, he was 2 and I was probably 4. Grew up with him, played sports with him. Had lobsters from his parents, and probably from Johnny too. I don't know. He never gave me any freebies, but anyway, just full disclosure, I've known John virtually my entire life, and I empathize with the situation that he's put in. I think that this board, I hope, to the public has seen that we're willing to cooperate and work with John to find some solutions to this so that we can allow him to continue the things that he wants to do. I want people to understand there is a process that we're going through. This is like the step one. I know you all have had other meetings with other boards, but that's irrelevant to us. Our job right now is to try to find a solution and to work through it, and there's a process that we'll go through.
It's been a long one.
Not interrupt me. Don't interrupt me. I didn't interrupt you.
Again, I would like to remind everyone that when someone is speaking, I would ask for your respect to let them complete. If you have further comments that you would like to make, I'm more than glad to engage. But please let Mr. Saban continue with his remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think some of the suggestions that have been brought forward are certainly workable, and I hope that John will work with the board to, some of these suggestions of limiting commercial fishing licenses and commercial retail, those types of suggestions can only sell what they catch, that type of stuff. I would appreciate, John, some working back and forth with us so that we can ultimately, the whole thing that we're going to go through right now ends with a vote at town meeting. So all of these people may be in support of you, but there are 20,000 people in this town. We don't know what the rest of them think. So we want to make sure that what we do is going to be acceptable to the majority of people at town meeting, and that it's a workable solution for not only you, but for the rest of the community. And I think that some of these suggestions are worth looking at. I've never heard the issue with regard to grandfathering. I'd be interested in hearing from town council about that as to how we could.
I guess the process that typically happens is there is a request, a determination is made by the building commissioner. You have the right to appeal that decision to the zoning board of appeals. The zoning board of appeals upheld that decision. So unless you're asking for different relief or seeking something different, that's kind of, that ship has sailed, unfortunately.
Right, no, I don't mean it that way. I mean, with regard, I think the suggestion I heard was to make the 1982 date. I don't know if that's something that we can legally do or not, so that would be something I'd ask some guidance on.
Yes, I see what you're saying.
Some of the suggestions were greatly appreciated. Our job now is to look at those and see if they're workable and find a way to get through this. But the other thing I wanted to say is this is only the beginning. Come to town meeting in the end, and please continue to participate in our town government, because it's, we all grew up here. Well, not all grew up here, but we all live here with you. So we're all trying to work together. So I hope we can get that done. That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Saban. Deirdre, anything?
I have no additional
Into your mic,
comments
Deirdre.
at the moment.
Yeah, you're,
No additional comments at the moment. Susan, I think you...
Ms. Britta?
Okay, I don't know John, but thank you for being here. I'll be quick because I have to leave it. I've been pressed into doing emergency teaching service tonight, so I have to leave at 6:30. A couple of clarifications. Is it my understanding you need a separate lobster license from other licenses? Is that what you said?
Well, I have 3 lobster licenses. One to go lobstering.
People can't hear you at home if you're not talking into a microphone.
Maybe he could come up to the table.
Not on the staff. Hello? Okay, so the first one is my lobster license, which lets me go lobstering, and I can
Correct.
sell to retail, wholesale dealers or whatever.
Right.
Then the second one is my retail boat license that allows me to sell to restaurants, anyone I want in the whole world.
Okay.
And then my third one is the retail truck, which from a truck I can sell to anyone I want also. And those are the 3. That's what the 3 licenses are. So that's the licenses that I have, and I don't need to have a license from the town because I'm already have the license. The building commissioner told me I don't need any other.
So if something happened, you could not sell from your home, would you have alternative places to sell, like from the wharf that you land at or other piers or something?
Oh,
are you totally out of business at that point?
I could sell them from any commercial property in Yarmouth.
Okay.
But I sell them from my house. That's where I have the lobster
that. I just
tanks.
didn't want I wanted to make sure that if Krakatoa happened and for some reason you could not sell from your house maybe this summer, that you were not totally out of business, that you had an alternative site. Okay.
Yeah, I have to find the place. I mean, because I'm going to basically want to be selling these things in 3 weeks here. So,
Okay.
I haven't looked out to any people because I didn't know what was going to happen.
Okay, and then one final question. I was told that the reason that shellfish and shrimp and clams are treated differently is because they go bad faster. And there's a longer, sort of shelf life with lobsters, so there's not...
This is why the state lets the lobstermen sell them, because it's not something it's not a processed fish, a fish fillet.
Okay.
And clams, oysters, and that type of stuff is regulated by, you don't even want to know the laws on that. They're really strict. They have to be on ice and the whole 9 yards. So the lobsters is because you're selling them alive. And I can't sell lobster meat. Like, I can't sell any pieces of lobster, like claws or tails or whatever. I have to sell, them alive.
Okay. I had one other question. On the suggestions that your lawyer made, do you have a preference? Do you have a preference in terms of the suggestions? I think grandfathering, I think your lawyer mentioned several times that that would be your preference.
Yeah, that's the preference, grandfathered. I mean,
Okay.
you know, my grandfather, my father, me, and then no one else because I don't have any children. If I did, like I said, I wouldn't let him be a fisherman, I'll tell you that. And my mother said, you should have never let John be a fisherman. Now I believe her.
Okay, that's all I have, Madam Chairman.
Mr. Rubenstein.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to say thanks to everybody coming out tonight, and certainly compared to the last time there was a conversation in a public forum about this subject, I'm just quite pleased that we're able to have a reasonable conversation, such as we're allowed to given the way these kinds of meetings are run. So I just wanted to start there, because I watched the video of that previous meeting, and it didn't go that well, and it wasn't even about what side I was on. It just was. It was bizarre, quite frankly. And so I just wanted to start there, that it is possible in the year 2025 for people who don't necessarily agree, or people who are in the process of getting more informed. As you may know, our zoning bylaw is large, and despite the fact that we do this part-time job twice a month, we don't have the entire zoning code memorized, and even some fine attorneys don't either. So the ability to talk about pieces of our zoning bylaws at specific times is important because it educates us. That doesn't mean we're dummies, but it also means we're also citizens just like you, and we can't be expected to know everything all the time. So having said that, this has been quite an education for me personally, and at the same time, I'm a little frustrated because as much as I support you, both in the long term and in the short term, I'm not sure that this board can give you the short-term relief that you're looking for the summer of 2025, which is why I'm glad that Ms. Britta brought up the concept of, despite our limitations, are there ways for you to still be able to have your business if we collectively can't give you the short-term deliverance that you would like, while, as Jim said, working very clearly and together on the long-term solution. So I think it's important to make those distinctions. I can only speak for myself. If I truly believe we had the ability for you to leave here tonight with the ability to sell shellfish from your home, then I would give it to you. But
not
shellfish. Sorry, lobsters. I apologize. Thank you, to be more precise. I just don't believe we have that power, and it isn't unless somebody can correct me. So the reason why I want to start there is because I understand what everybody wants for you, okay? And I'm including my personal opinion. I want for you to be able to sell lobster from your home this summer. Unfortunately, again, not through any circumstance that any of us have created, but we are responding to, we cannot give you that short-term solution from your home, which is why I'm glad that Ms. Britta brought up the concepts, which I'm sure you've discussed with your council, about what could you do this summer if you weren't allowed to sell lobsters from your home. Does that make sense where I'm starting from?
All right, this is my suggestion. The great town of Yarmouth that we live in, doesn't they have plenty of pieces of property on Route 28 that they could let Captain John sell his lobsters from?
Again, I'm not debating.
Just saying, there's a lot of places on 28, and I can look at them all. I'm lived here my whole life. Believe me, I know every road in this town. And so there's plenty of places where they could say, like where old Shea Lenoir used to be, Jimmy, on the corner there. They're not using that property. It's in the corner of West Yarmouth Road and Route 28. Why didn't they just say, John, you can sell your lobsters there for the summertime or whatever?
I'm not disagreeing.
No, I know.
I'm not
I'm just saying
disagreeing that is a possible outcome that I think would probably be a conversation for you and your attorney, and maybe some other town officials.
If I may, I would like, as much as we can, to stay on topic. Our process here tonight is one to move from here to there, and the relief that you're looking for the summer, is not something we can give you, unfortunately.
Why are we here?
You're here, and again, I would like to have some decorum. If you'd like to ask a question, yes, I would. Yes, I would.
Madam Chair, I believe I was in the middle of my comments, but I'm happy to defer.
Why are we here if we're not going to get anything done?
We are going to get something done.
What are we going to get done?
We are going to start the process of writing an amendment to the zoning bylaw for the town of Yarmouth so that he can sell lobsters from his home.
Are we going to do that tonight?
We are starting the process to get him to the point where he can sell lobsters from his home.
You realize we're in a time constraint here.
I fully recognize that.
Chair, could you ask him to identify himself?
Keep hearing what we can't do.
I
want to see what we can do.
Identify yourself.
Get it done. Craig Williams, South Yarmouth.
Okay.
What's your name? I'm sorry, sir.
Craig Williams, South Yarmouth.
Okay, Mr. Williams, we
I've been
appreciate.
to several meetings now, and it seems like everybody wants to talk about it, but nobody wants to do anything.
Well, sir, with all due respect,
literally
we
not true.
We are trying to do something here, and we'd like to continue the.
Every meeting there is. Nobody wants to do anything. It should have never got this far. Okay.
Well, that's something I can't comment on. We are here to get Mr. Tolley what he wants.
Okay, so we're actually going to accomplish something tonight to get Mr. Tolley to move forward.
We're going to start the process to get it going, yes. Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Aren't we?
Move forward. Let's go.
Madam Chair,
Yeah,
can I get... Sorry.
Mr. Rubenstein had the floor. Again, if you have questions, if you have concerns, I'd like for all the planning board members to have their chance to comment and have any questions answered that they might have. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Mr. Rubenstein.
Thank you. So again, I just want to express the fact that I am frustrated that we literally are not allowed to give you the summer relief that you want. That is not the fault of the people sitting up here. It is not. At the same time, as the chair said from the beginning, we want to do what we can do, and what we can do is work on the process so that when we get to November, we can go to special town meeting, and the town of Yarmouth can decide, after the process that we've gone through together, to enact an amendment to the zoning bylaw that allows you to sell lobsters from your home. And I apologize that we're not able to give not just you, but lots of other upset people in the room the immediate relief that they want. I am sorry that we can't do that. But I'm also not, we also can't sit up here and vote on something that literally can't happen for the summer of 2025. So the good news is that we've collected a lot of really good ideas, and we are limited by the rules in the town bylaws about what the planning board can and can't do. And for all of you out there that may one day be sitting on this side of the conversation, please understand that we are doing the very best that we can under the situation and the bylaws and the rules of our town. And for those of you shaking your head, you don't know what you're talking about. We are trying to do the best job that we can. Literally, we are trying to do the best job that we can. And we are committed to working with you to get a zoning bylaw amendment for Mr. Tolley so that he can sell lobsters from his home. And there's nothing we can do about the fact that it will take until November to accomplish it. Why does it have to take so long? Thank you.
Mr. Slovak.
John, do all parts of your business predate 82? Your licenses, your use of signage?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You've always had signs out by 28 since you...
Oh, no, I haven't always had signs out on 28, but I've sold from the house since 1975.
75.
I was 16.
Could you continue to do what you're doing without the signage? I mean, if there was a part, if there was a part of what you do that wasn't grandfathered, could you continue to do what you do and survive? Or
I'm just going to jump in here, Jonathan Poloni again. I don't want to distract attention away from kind of the purpose that we're here tonight, but just to, because you're kind of talking about what happened with the ZBA. What happened with the ZBA was that there was the first hearing where John went by himself, had gotten some advice from the building commissioner, and was asking for the zoning board to vary the bylaw to allow him to do what he was doing. The building commissioner hadn't flagged grandfathering. Grandfathering wasn't discussed at that hearing at all, and they denied the variance. The only thing that they said was, you can't sell lobsters in a B4 district. That's not what fishing means. So when I got involved after that, I asked Mark to reissue another enforcement so that we could bring it back to the ZBA and ask them the grandfathering questions that we had done. You know, did a lot of zoning research to try and understand what the zoning bylaw said. And that's what we were hoping to do at the second ZBA meeting, when everybody came to that thinking that we were going to have that conversation around grandfathering. Now, as Will observed in that hearing, this is not what happened. The zoning board chose to say, we already addressed that in the first hearing, we can't have the second hearing, we're not going to talk about it. And I think that's what's underscoring some of the frustration that you're feeling tonight, is that there has been this continuity of well-intentioned people along saying, well, we'll work this out, we'll work this out. John's been told that numerous times. And then you get to a certain point, and then the response is, no, we can't do that for you. I mean, that was literally what happened at the second ZBA hearing, was the chairman saying, you're not allowed to be here because you lost your chance from the last hearing. So we're bringing up the grandfathering, I think, in a different manner to suggest that it could be inserted into the zoning bylaw. I think to Jim's question, I don't think there's a problem with changing the zoning bylaw to call out a date. That's how a lot of, zoning bylaw modifications work, is by specifying what the date is that you're going to judge things by. So it seems a reasonable, and I'm happy to send an email with specific language, but if that just kind of clarifies the grandfathering thing, it never got addressed by the zoning board. And so we are going to appeal that zoning board decision in the interim and see where we can take that, and see what other relief we can get for John in the meantime.
You had mentioned the agricultural use earlier. So, I mean, if he wanted a farm stand to sell tomatoes, he could do that?
Well, yeah. In the agriculture, you could grow, you could raise goats on your property in the residential district legally as an allowed use.
But the shellfish wasn't part of the agricultural use.
I mean, to me, fishing is an allowed use in the residential district. One of my arguments to the ZBA was going to be this: fishing is an allowed use, and under the accessory use table, you can do other uses as long as they're not detrimental to the neighborhood. So my backup argument, if they didn't want to go the protected use route, was to say this is actually allowed as long as you determine that it's not a nuisance to the neighborhood. And all of the neighbors were going to show up, and many of them submitted letters saying, we love John, we love his business, it doesn't impact us at all, we're very happy for him to continue doing what he's doing. So it seems a little weird to me that an allowed use, you wouldn't be able to present that to the zoning board, but that was essentially the zoning board's decision, was we've already decided that, you didn't appeal it, we're not going to take this up again. So I think that's wrong, because how can you kind of procedurally just say an allowed use can't happen anymore? But we're going to work through that.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah, for full disclosure, Ms. Tully, I've bought lobsters from you, and thank you. Yep, and the bottom line is this, is what it really comes down to, is that, as Will eloquently put, our hands are tied. There's a process that we can do. And outside that process, I know it's disappointing for today, and we want to work with you. We want to make this happen. Now, I wasn't born in Yarmouth, but I've lived here since I was 15, and I don't want to see Yarmouth get away from its roots. I had to in the fishing part of it, and I believe that I support. I can't answer for the rest of the board, but I support what you're trying to do, and how this board can help you get there. That's what we're trying to work through the process.
Madam Chair, are you going to have a say, or are you going to wait?
I'll wait.
Okay.
So my question is, when we had that meeting, oh, were you up first? When we had that meeting with that zoning board that turned out to be click, they had a golden opportunity to step up to the plate and man up and say we made an honest mistake. Is that what, was that what he was supposed to do, go to the zoning board? And they doubled down. And they could have manned up and said, we made a mistake, let's discuss it, like you guys have opened up the discussion. You're talking, you're listening to us. We didn't have a voice at all, and it was extremely frustrating. So this zoning board needs to step up. They're wrong. What they did was wrong. And now you're telling him he's going to go back to the zoning board? No. Like, really? We're all going to be going out in handcuffs at some point. I mean, how many times you gotta go back and forth to the zoning board? They should have stepped up at that last meeting. It's not looking good. It's not looking good. You keep on fighting, John. Fight, fight, fight.
Garrett Stagg. I've lived in Yarmouth for 25 years. I grew up in a family business on the Cape. I started working when I was 6 years old with my family business, okay? I'm extremely concerned that you're taking this man's livelihood away this summer, 100%. If you need us to go up in front of Stop and Shop with some clipboards in order to collect signatures from people from this town, I'll be the first one in order to stand there with the clipboard in my hand in order to collect signatures for him. It's shameful what you guys are. I'll take that back. It's shameful that the town of Yarmouth as a whole is doing what they're doing by not letting him do what he wants to do for his living. It's unconstitutional what they're doing. You should be able to grandfather in what he can do, what he could do with his own property. You should be able to even legislate zoning as far as I'm concerned. That's all I've got to say. Oh, the other thing I want to say, I find it very interesting about you guys talking about signage problems. On my way here, driving down West Yarmouth Road, I passed by the little strip mall there. They used to have the Radio Shack. The Radio Shack sign is still up. So what's up with that? Why can't the town mitigate the Radio Shack sign? Radio Shack's been out of business for how long now? 5 years? 10 years? And you're talking about a signage problem? Are you kidding me? All set, folks.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Ball, and I just think that common sense needs to make a comeback. I think this town has really lost its way. We really need to think about who we are and what we want to be, and we're losing what makes Cape Cod special. Guys like John Tolley, you know, he makes Yarmouth special. And I think if we lose him and then we lose a cranberry bog and we lose something else, we're just really, you know, turning into any other town in any other city in any other state. And I think this is a lesson to everyone of what big government can do to a small town. And we really need to find our way back to just being Yarmouth. I think it's really important that we get back to the basics.
We're just hearing the same things, so.
Priscilla Hogan, South Yarmouth. My question is, because I understand what the planning board is responsible for, and it's changing the bylaws. So who do you recommend that he goes to? Who would be the person to go to get that he can continue while all of this gets settled? Who would that be? Instead of keep going from place to place, somebody, town council, I don't know who it is, must be able to allow him to continue till this gets resolved.
November.
No, not November. No, because it's not going to happen in November. Who would it be? Do you know?
I don't think I want to be in a position to recommend where Mr. Tolley go for help this summer, other than to say that he's already made suggestions himself, as has his attorney, as to opportunities that might exist should he choose to pursue them. I don't know what the regulations might be for him to collaborate with another commercial business on 28 and set up a truck. I don't know. I don't know what the regulations are required were he to sell his lobsters off his boat, at his slip, wherever that might be.
That's at my house. My trailer is.
Well, where you haul it out.
Is there any way?
My point is, the planning board is not in the position to recommend the highest and best solution for Mr. Tolley's unfortunate predicament he's in right now. Again, my position here, as is the planning board's, is we want to help you get out of this. Right. But our position in terms of what we are able to do right now is merely, and that I feel like that's what you think we're doing, is merely starting the process. It has to start somewhere, or it doesn't get done. And we are starting it now. We are starting it now, so that there will be a permanent solution for this issue in the future.
Right.
We're going to move it as quickly as we can.
Right.
We'll do everything we need to make it happen. But in the end, it is town meeting that will decide.
Right.
And I hope all of you and your friends and associates will show up for town meeting. And show this kind of support. That's the Yarmouth we are. I agree with you. This is not the Yarmouth we want to show on on national TV. That a lobsterman is in a little bit of a predicament. That's not what we want. But my point, excuse me. I've done very little speaking tonight. I've done a lot of listening. And I would appreciate the same respect given to me and to the person at the pulpit. So my point is, we're not in a position to provide that kind of a recommendation, but I think Mr. Tolley's already found some ideas that he would like to pursue aggressively between now and his first catch to get something going. And I believe there might be a way to do that. I mean, there are farmers markets. I don't know what all of those require. There are, again, you had suggested town property on Route 28. There are commercial collaborations with others. Unfortunately, I believe that's a responsibility for Mr. Tolley and not certainly for the planning board.
I don't know if it would be under your purview or not, but is it possible that they can hold off stop the business till after the summer? You know how they've not letting him do it. I mean, can they push it off knowing that everything is in the works so that he can continue till things get squared away?
The zoning board of appeals decision is a standing
place,
a standing position.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Saban.
Could I go back to, I apologize I didn't address this at the beginning, but one of the speakers, Ari Bargo from the Institute of Justice, is he still on?
Mr. Bargo, are you still with us?
I don't see him on the
I don't think
list.
so,
I don't
Jim.
see him on
I'm
the
here.
list. Oh, he is.
I am
There he
here.
is.
I was automatically muted, but I am here.
There he is.
Okay.
So you had mentioned, if you don't mind, the concept of home-based businesses, banning of home-based businesses is unconstitutional. Did I hear that
I
correct?
didn't say it that broadly, but it can be absolutely, yes.
Could you send us some of your documentation with regards to home-based businesses? Again, we want to get things right the first time. We don't want to get things sent up to Boston and have them say, you can't do that. So if there are some things that you can share with this board that would be helpful, I would appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bargo.
I'm also comfortable making recommendations now if you'd like to have them.
If you could just forward them in the instance of time and an NBA basketball game in 15 minutes. If you could forward them to our town planner, then I'm sure that our board will be able to look at them. Thank you.
Will do.
Any other follow-up comments from board members? Any follow-up comments from the public? I would like to thank you for coming this evening. I wanted to have this meeting be one that was informative, one where we help the public as best we can understand how we have to do things to get them done right, so that we don't do them all over again. But in this case, for an amendment to the bylaw, we need to carefully follow certain steps, which we intend to do as expeditiously as we can to get Mr. Tolley and others like him some of these amendments and changes to the zoning bylaw that seem to make, to me, an awful lot of sense. So I want to thank you all for coming. We really appreciate your time here. And watch for our agenda. This will be on our agenda throughout the summer as we develop the language that we intend to propose for public hearing. So thank you all for joining us.
Are there some people that also would like to stick around for the
We're moving on to the second amendment change with regard to boat storage and recreational vehicles. on-site boat storage in residential zoning districts.
People. Sit in the front if you want until, yeah. Can't handle all the history.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Can't handle all the history and the stories. I have to make notes of this crap. It's good. I'm a fact-based person.
Process, he was not allowed to appeal it. It was decided by one.
See Mark Grills in the audience.
So again, the second item on our zoning amendment agenda this evening.
Madam Chair, I think it's fair to ask people to take their conversation.
Wait till they clear the room, Madam Chair.
We'd like to continue the meeting. If you could take your conversations out in the hallway, that would be really helpful. Thank you so much.
All right.
So, with regard to on-site boat storage in residential zoning districts, Kathy, would you like to give us the staff overview of this particular amendment?
Sure. This is not the first time the planning board has kind of taken a look at this. Back in 2019, we looked to modify some of the sections like camping and recreation equipment to address the locations of boats on residential properties, which right now need to be behind the front face of the building. We acknowledge that as a seaside community, there's a lot of people who have boats that they want to keep at their residence, especially during the active boating season. However, not all of these homeowners can easily, on a daily basis, get their boat off to the side. I'm always impressed by people who can use the trailers and move their boats, and they park it on a dime, and it's very impressive. So as such, the planning board investigated other acceptable locations for boat storage to reduce this amount of regulatory enforcement required for this zoning section. Basically, what was presented was the first paragraph stayed the same about the front face, behind the front line of the building, except for loading and unloading, but then they added one lawfully registered boat may be parked or stored in a residential lot regardless of location relating to the building, provided it does not create a traffic or fire safety issue and adequate on-site parking remains for the property. The idea is we didn't want people parking their boats in their driveways and then parking their cars out on the street. The planning board recommended this article, and when they went to the select board, they voted unanimously not to recommend the article, as some members were concerned about the possible aesthetics nuisance opposed to neighbors, as well as suggesting that maybe we need to have some type of distinction between parking a boat during the boating season and then having maybe some off-season storage of a boat that's all shrink-wrapped in someone's driveway. Ultimately, the planning board voted to withdraw the article, and it did not go before the voters. We understand that there's some residents who are interested in reintroducing this idea to allow for more flexibility in locations of boats on residential properties.
Thank you. So I see we have two gentlemen at the table. If you'd like to introduce yourselves.
Sure. My name's Alden Childs, West Yarmouth.
My name's Richard Gallagher. I'm not a resident of the town. Alden is my stepson, and I'm here to assist him, support him, that kind of thing. And I would like to, if I may, and I appreciate Chairman Crowley, your Chairwoman Crowley, you're having us here tonight. It's very special for us to be invited through your planner, Kathy, and we had a nice conversation. Just a quick background, if I may, how and why we are here tonight, Alden and myself. As you see, there isn't 500 people behind us because we have found in our research that when this started with Alden, Mr. Childs, Alden, and I would like to state for the record that my wife Susan is here, and Susan is Alden's mother. Susan brought up two beautiful children on her own, single mother. Alden is one of them. When Alden got through school and moved on in his career, he became a sworn police officer in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It was a great day to watch him go through the academy and graduate.
He decided to make his home. He got married to a beautiful person. Her name is Sarah, and he has a beautiful daughter, Olivia. And he decided to make his home in Yarmouth. One of the dreams Alden had was to buy a boat someday. He didn't have those opportunities and privileges when he was younger. His mother had everything to do to raise them on her own. And I say that only because in any discussion or any forum in front of a distinguished group of all of you, it's important that we institute the word compassion. So Alden bought his boat, and he's been living in, he'll explain this better than I will, because I'm just giving you a little background so you have some kind of something to go on as to why we are here tonight. When he bought his boat, he had it for approximately 4 or 5 years. He lives on Forest Road. He has a center console boat, if any you're familiar with that. I've had a boat in my lifetime. I'm 74. I've had a boat in my lifetime, about 40 to 50 years of that time, in Hyannisport, Massachusetts, where my parents gave us the great privilege to be. And my brother now lives in that same area, and he has a boat very similar to Alden's. Alden's boat is not unusual in terms of its size. It's 24 feet. Center console boats on Cape Cod and the surrounding waters is probably one of the most popular boats that is out there. Having said that, it's a majority of the boaters enjoy this kind of recreational boating. And I just, for fun, I wanted to just show you a picture of that. It's this is the boat that Alden somewhat has. They're all pretty similar. There's so many companies now that make boats. That haven't, well, you go back to the 1971 bylaw, the boating industry took off quite a bit. Fiberglass became very popular. The old mom and pop building of boats they're still out there, thank goodness. We have that great tradition. So there's a lot of interest in boating. You go to the boat shows, people go in, they buy a boat. Unfortunately, a lot of them don't know what the sea is all about. And I know we've got something going to correct that, have a better permitting licensing process. So when Alden got his boat, which is a high-value boat, by the way, these boats are not inexpensive. They're not something you'd get at, say, the old Sears Roebuck and the old tin rowboat. These are boats that are meant to be on the sea. And he bought it with the safety in mind and the ability to do multiple things with the boat under the category of recreation. And he fishes, he cruises, he enjoys the sea, which is a remarkable thing, and a lot of people don't. We understand that. Not everybody wants to be on the water. But it's hard to get away from the fact that Cape Cod is surrounded by the sea. People come here to enjoy the sea, to take in the amenities that it brings, and may I just add, the economic engine that the boating industry brings to Cape Cod is very, very significant, overwhelming. So what does that mean? Well, anything when you talk about economics, it equates to taxes, excise taxes that Alden very freely pays to the town of Yarmouth. And in our research, that number in the town we believe is around $35,000 to $40,000 a year to the town. Pretty significant. And so it also goes further than that. It goes to the economics of the marinas, the employment, the equipment you buy for boats, the jobs that it creates on Cape Cod. Alden participates in that as just one individual, and he enjoys it so very, very much. So when he got his boat and put it in his driveway, he did not know from the town that there was a bylaw in any particular way. He did not know about the 1971 bylaw. So when he got a violation from the town through the building inspector's office, it was a surprise, because the first thing we wanted to know is we came down to the town hall, did our homework, went to every office that we needed to go to get some facts. It was a fact-finding mission, thoughtful, kind. Everyone was very, very helpful to us. Kathy was great. We spoke to the assessors. We spoke to all sorts of people to find out what the bylaw meant. What was it written to do? What was the integrity of it? I can only speak for myself, but when I first read that bylaw in 1971, I have to say to you, it was very poorly written. It did not separate out the recreational boats from campers. I'm here to speak for boating. I can't speak for campers. We're not here for that. That's what you have to decide. So in reading it, and it wasn't very long, it did not say anything about fines. It didn't say anything about if you didn't do this or that. And so right away I said, we got to work on that. And that's what I hope we can do with you. And getting the violation about a year ago, Alden, I will be very honest with you, has been very stressed by it. It's been very emotional, because we learned that we were not given the correct answer when we asked the question, under the open meeting law, could we see at least the complaint? Could we see that? We were given, well, I don't know, we don't really have it, and so forth. But we were assured that it came from the public. We just learned last week, after a year, that that was false information. It came from within. So those are the facts. We're beyond that, and we don't want to really go there tonight. We want to stay on mission to try to get something better for all boaters. So Alden has kept his boat in his driveway, on his trailer. He uses it practically every day he gets off his shift, if he can. It's a great stress releaser. He puts his life on the line every day. So I've had the opportunity to be Hyannis Fire Commissioner for 26 years. So I know what putting your life on the line is in representing those firefighters. And recreational boating, if I may put this, just read this into the record, it's interesting, because in Webster's dictionary, recreational is a refreshment in the body or mind as after work by some form of play, amusement, or relaxation, any form of sports or hobbies. So that's what he does. That's what he did, and he minded his own business, keeps the boat immaculate in his yard. So the law said, the inspectors said, you have to put your boat on the side of your house or in the rear. So that raises the question of common sense. I've had a boat, as I just said to you. My brother's had a boat. In Barnstable, they don't get concerned about it. They're pro-boat, quite frankly. They just bought a marina. They bought a couple of marinas. And because they understand how important, as I just said to you, the economics, the joy that we offer here on Cape Cod to that industry. So Alden goes through a year. We're waiting to hear. We reached out to the Board of Selectmen. We wrote them a letter. They referred it to the town manager. Not unusual. Never heard from the selectman or the chair, not even a thank you note or nothing. So I was chairman when I was fire commissioner. That's personal, I guess. That's not something I wouldn't do. I would write back to that person, thank them for their opportunity to speak. So we got obviously a little upset over all of that. Again, that's yesterday. What can we do with you to amend the bylaw to allow, I guess in 2018, you visited this, and I think you recommended something. And the Board of Selectmen apparently rejected it. And then I guess it went to town meeting. I don't even know if it got to town meeting.
Did not get to
No, it did not get to town meeting.
Thank you. So we would like to try in representing all voters that, for example, a boat under 27 feet could be in your driveway unrestricted. Shrink wrapped in the winter. Shrink wrapping, I understand, as someone brought it up somewhere along the line, was problematic. I don't understand that thinking, but I'd like to know what is problematic about it. It's part of boating. I mean, you want to protect a high-valued piece of equipment, just like you would protect your SUV Cadillac on the driveway. You know, so we'll get through that with all of you. We can work on that. That's all we're trying to do. In the end of all of this is we were out, my wife and I, Alden was working in our research and fact-finding. We asked a few people, a few residents. We started to notice multiple boats in Yarmouth in driveways. We campaigned, or a better word would be, we asked people that had boats in the driveway, have you ever had a violation? No. We've been here 20 years, never had a violation. Do you know that there's a bylaw about parking your boat in your driveway? Never heard of it. We asked enough people we could continue this, and we probably will.
We're very familiar with that, sir.
Excuse me?
We're very familiar with that issue.
Okay.
Which is why.
Okay,
Which
great.
is why we're here tonight
Exactly. Well,
to
thank you.
address
Exactly.
the amendment that we think might work. So
Okay.
if I could ask you, we'd like to look forward and not back. I truly appreciate your comments about the specifics for you, Aidan, but we have an idea for what we would like to propose that we tried once before, and we thought we had almost crossed the finish line, but we didn't. So we are looking for your suggestions on what you would like a revised zoning bylaw to look like. We have one up here on the screen that is pretty open-ended. And I would appreciate if you have any suggestions or comments on that particular language that we have here right now.
Okay. That'd be great.
And as the proud owner of a Parker 18 center console, I will tell you, I'm with you on this one. And I'm not sure what Aidan would like to say, but we'd like to also engage with others who might want to have something to say as well. I don't know if we have anyone on Zoom.
We do not.
We do not. So if you have any particular specific comments with regard to what's up on the board behind Kathy, we'd appreciate that.
Well, that would be great, Madam Chairman. We appreciate that. Again, we're not here to be in any way negative. We're here to try to make something work
As we are.
for everybody.
Yeah, that's why we're here too.
For everybody. Because the bylaw of 1971, it's 50 years old.
Yeah, and we knew that. We knew that back in
The word
2017.
amendment was put out there for a reason. They do it in the State House every day, somewhat in the Congress every day, not recently, but in any event, thank you so much. Now, Alden would like to just say a few words, and
Sure.
I thank you for letting me speak.
Yeah, you are certainly welcome.
Appreciate that. I'm a citizen, so I love boating. This is a great place to do it. You don't do it in Dover. You don't do it in Acton. Don't do it in Brookfield. So Thank you so much.
Yeah,
All of
certainly. Alden, any comments?
No, I would just like to say, obviously, I have a small property, and driving around town, I see a lot of other small properties that have the same issue that I have. But obviously, what you have written up there is pretty spot on. I would agree with. Just include maybe a trailer with it. But yeah, I wouldn't add too much more to that. I think you guys have it squared away there.
And again, the concept here from a while ago was, we don't want the parking of the vessel to be now taking the space where a car would ordinarily be. We don't want to move the car to the street.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
The only other comment that I had on the bylaw saying that put it on the side of your house or in the rear, it's just unfeasible. And I understand, whoever wrote it just doesn't understand that. You don't take a high-valued boat and shove it in some brush, no one parks a boat in the backyard. Who wants to park a boat in the backyard? First of all, you can't get there without getting stuck, or, it's not made for that. So it really doesn't have much merit. But that's all I can tell you.
Not an uncommon bylaw, though. That is, other communities have that. That's not just a Yarmouth. I've seen that.
Cape Cod communities?
Oh, yes.
They may. I'm not saying they
I've
don't.
seen anything on Cape Cod, but I've seen other states for sure, but I'm not aware of anything locally. So.
Keep in mind, we checked about 5-6 towns: Chatham, Sandwich, I think Falmouth,
Dennis. Yeah.
Dennis. They don't bother you.
Brewster.
Well, we will check.
Get it. They get this is what we do.
They may have made amendments themselves between now and when we last had one, and we typically do a comparison across all of the towns, so we will more than likely engage and see what's out there for everybody else. But I'd like to ask if you have any other comments, and if not, I'd like to open it up to anyone else who would like to speak.
When we found out that there weren't many people complaining, we did get a record of that finally. It took me some time under the open meeting law, but we got it a couple of days ago. They didn't give me the last 2 years, which was requested. Don't know why. Obviously, Alden got one, but it went back. But they were minimal. Over a 50-year period, there weren't many people that are complaining. So the ones that are complaining, is there any way that they can deeply and explain themselves specifically what their problem is with a boat? I know we talked about, we don't want to have a junkyard boatyards at home. We don't want 10 cars in your driveway. But this is not what's happening. A boat is a very beautiful thing in terms of what we do on the Cape. So it's hard. It's been hard for all of them. His boat has been in my driveway all winter. Had to move out of Yarmouth. That's what Yarmouth said.
Mm-hmm.
Get out. We said.
Well, we're looking to make some improvements here. So you're welcome. Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Jerry O'Connell. I apologize because I have a camper and a boat in my driveway, and I know about the law. But anyways, please send it to the select board after May 20th. Thank you.
We're not going to ask where that would be.
I just have a question. How long has that
Identify
been the
yourself,
bylaw?
please. Could you just remind us who you are, please,
Sorry,
for the record?
Cheryl Ball.
Sorry, can you say that?
Cheryl Ball.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Yeah, how long has this been the bylaw in Yarmouth?
1971.
71.
Because, yeah, I will say that the entire time I've lived in Yarmouth, I had no idea that was even a law because there's boats everywhere in everybody's driveways. It's one of the things that makes me feel blessed to live on Cape Cod is to see a boat in the driveway because I know I'm near the water. So,
thank you, Carol.
I don't, Madam Chair, I mean,
Yes.
I don't think the building inspector goes looking for
no.
problems.
No.
I think if it's presented to him, or he's going to follow up and then,
That's usually how it comes through.
I mean, I think that's.
That's exactly how it comes
Got
down.
enough to do. He doesn't go looking for it.
No. It could be that the boat appears in the front yard, or two boats appear in the front yard,
Right.
which brings attention to it.
Somebody
And
complains.
therefore, others, neighbors or others, might then speak with the building commissioner about that.
Madam Chair, may I
Yes,
ask Aiden
Mr.
a question? Aiden, you said that.
Alden, yep.
Alden, I'm sorry, Alden, excuse me. That your boat wasn't a neighbor's complaint. That's what you found out?
From my understanding, it was a complaint about a camper at the beginning of my road, and so he issued a violation to them and then drove around the neighboring area to find what else was there.
So did he issue a complaint to you, or just was it verbal?
I got a written letter.
You got a written letter?
Yep.
Okay.
On that issue, the problem that we were finding, as the Attorney General's office stated, there is no conformity or uniform in the enforcement in Yarmouth. It's not good.
I think the actual request for this change came from the building commissioner because he didn't want to have to deal with this because he understands we're a boating community. So
Yeah,
this
I
actually
remember-
came
Came
from
from the building commissioner.
Yeah, Mark Grillis, I think,
Yeah.
wrote something a few years ago
Yep. This
is
agreeing
it.
with this. So, yep.
Yeah. Any other comments from the public? Any questions or comments from the members of the board?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
If I may?
Mr. Saban?
I can empathize. I once had a sticker put on my boat for being parked in front of my house and had to move it, and it wasn't on a trailer, so I had to hire somebody to come move it. So I understand that. I know the bylaw now. Whenever we bring something to town meeting, the whole idea is to get it passed. And to get it passed, you need, correct me if I'm wrong, 2/3 majority vote on a zoning article. So this is going to require 2/3 of the people that show up to town meeting to say, yeah, they're okay with this. With regards to your question about people who are opposed to it, we'll have hearings between now and then, and at town meeting, they will have their opportunity to tell us why they think we shouldn't, if there are such people. Apparently, last time, there were some issues that Board of Selectmen, March of 2019, I'm not sure if any of them are still even on the board, maybe Mark might be. So I don't know what their objections were. Again, the idea is to try to get something passed. So if there are objections, we want to find out what those are and try to write this new bylaw that will address those. Again, so 2/3 of the majority of people in town will support them. Peter had asked the question, are any other towns restrict storage? I'd be interested to know what kind of bylaw they have that restricts it, that may be any different than ours. I talked to Dennis this morning, and they instructed me to go online and page 11, and I'll go do that, but I was busy the rest of my day, to look at their bylaws. And maybe there are some compromises, and I appreciate the comment with regards to boat size. So maybe part of this new bylaw that we're trying to get through allows you to store a boat under 27 feet, and maybe we have a discussion about whether you can have it during the boating season and store it elsewhere for the winter months. That's another part of the discussion we could have. It's my understanding that Dry Dock Marine is closing, so their solution for storing off-site makes it even more difficult. And again, these are the things that I think we need to discuss through this process to try to come up with a bylaw that says, yeah, you can park a boat in your yard, but you've got to do this, 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 and this. So, I think, like the last group that was here, this is step one of a process. Any suggestions that you have, or even other people who are in the community here that if you think it's a good idea to restrict the size of the boat, or maybe you don't want us to have them stored in the winter months, we need to hear that so that we craft this bylaw in a way that is beneficial to the community and that we pass it at town meeting. The distinction between campers and boats, I kind of get why they're all put together. They're recreational vehicles, typically used very similarly. Summer months, that's how I use my camper and my boat. I use them in the summer and put them away in the winter. Full disclosure, my camper is parked in Dennis because I can't park it in front of my house. So I understand, I'm supportive of getting a bylaw passed, but it's got to be one that 2/3 of the people in town think is acceptable. So any input as far as what, if if the select board was is this the same bylaw that was presented in 2009 with the amended right?
2019?
19, I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is exactly it, the article. And I did look back at the minutes from that meeting, and that's where I gleaned those comments with regard to concerns about possible aesthetic nuisance can be posed to neighbors, and then also just suggesting a distinction between parking a boat during the boating season and off-season storage of boats, which may be shrink-wrapped. I think that was Eric Tolley.
Yeah, so it sounds like part of the issues are, a shrink-wrapped boat in your front yard is ugly. And I also understand the concerns with regards to fire safety. I don't think we want to allow, a 27-foot boat parked horizontally in front of the front door so that you and your service or our other first responders can't get there for whatever the reason. So I understand how why there's a reason for this. We need to just tweak it so that it works for the people and for the community as a whole. So just be patient with us. We're trying to get that done.
Madam Chair, another part to piggyback on what Jim started to say is that I don't know that Yarmouth, where can we park boats by right? B3, if I want to go buy an acre of land tomorrow and fill it with boats, I don't think we can do it by right in town, right?
Oh, I don't think you can do it by right. It's also in the Aquifer Protection District, and I know that things when boats are stored in the wintertime, they still have their gasoline in them? Or is there or they need to have a certain fuel amount of them? Yeah, so there were some concerns when someone wanted to do that, a very large one, about storing all of those types of things in our Aquifer Protection Districts.
Right, but I mean, we have many of our houses are in the APD as well. So, you're storing them on White's Path, you're storing them in Captain's Village. What's the difference? So, I mean, that's why I'm saying maybe we need to look at our zoning again and decide how somebody can do that.
Do more boat storage, you mean?
By right.
I think Peter's right, because if we write a bylaw that says you can't store it in your yard in the winter, well, where are they going to store it? So we need to be able to make sure that there's an avenue there for them to be able to find alternatives to that, should we go that route.
Right. And some of it's already grandfathered, some of it off the corporation.
Correct.
I don't know. I know the boatyards that are down there, but I mean, so they're storing boats now, but I think that was all 2004-ish, 2003-ish, and then all of a sudden something happened and they don't allow it at all by right. I mean, dry dock was in there, I remember, because I read the special permit going back a long time ago, and I think it was Brandolini at the time considered it trucking. He found the use code that allowed it to continue or something, so. But they wouldn't be able to do that today, by right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a member of the public. When you're ready.
Any other comments or questions from the board? We do have some members of the public.
No, it's a gentleman right there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. No.
Sorry, I thought you meant the Zoom.
Public, Madam Chair. Young people say IRL in real life. Here he is.
IRL, there we go.
Hi, my name's Joe Delisio. I'm from West Yarmouth. I like the language that is written right there. Particularly, I don't like putting a disclaimer for the winter months. A lot of us boaters buy small boats so we can store them at our house because the cost is astronomical and very limited, especially now with the closure of the storage over by the dump there. So, I mean, it's hard to find places to store boats. Most of us boaters are very meticulous. And we take care of them, we wrap them, they're clean, they don't look bad or anything like that. So that language there, I think, makes it very clear. It's for residential people that use their boating for residential reasons. I'm not going to make a safety hazard at my house, but that's addressed in there. So I hope that you don't alter that language to make it more difficult for those of us that trailer boats and store them as well. So, thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi, good evening. My name's Julie O'Brien. I'm a full-time resident here in South Yarmouth. I also am a boater. I have a 20-foot, not a center console. Well, that's on my bucket list. I have a dual console. And I didn't know about this bylaw when we purchased the boat about 5 years ago. And I do like this wording. I appreciate actually, Alden, your involvement here and your advocacy for yourself and others. I like the fact that you put the trailer language. A couple of concerns. Definitely the storage in the off season. very expensive. We happen to do that now because I don't have a trailer, but when we get a trailer, and our goal is to winterize it, and shrink wrap it and have it in our yard, which happens to have 2 driveways right now. And we don't have access to the backyard. And so, and I agree with the previous speaker, absolutely agree. It's very, very expensive even for a 20-foot, it's, and a lot of boaters like to, get larger boats. So that's a concern as well. So I want to make sure that, that's a consideration of the board before it goes to, the select board or town meeting. And not add that wording for the storage. I think that's really going to cause a lot of issues for many of us. And I'm just one of the newer rookie boaters. And then adequate on-site parking. I guess the question is, that's kind of vague. Adequate on-site parking. I'm not asking for it to be more specific, but the only concern is many of us have driveways and maybe some shells, rocks in the front that actually aren't, there's no sidewalk on my street, but maybe if there's no sidewalk, there might be an area where we might want to put the boat. It's just a concern we have. The adequate on-site parking, it's kind of vague. I don't have an answer to it, but right now for me and my wife and my family, it works. We have two driveways in the front.
Madam Chair.
Thanks for your time.
Yes, Mr. Smith.
Touch on the adequate on-site parking. It just, the reason for that piece in there, so we don't displace a motor vehicle. You have your boat in your driveway, and now you have no place to park your car, so you're moving that out into the street. That's not what we want to have happen. That's really the way that language is written in there for.
No, that makes sense. Understood. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Okay, and any other comments from planning board? So, Kathy, we'll continue to work on this. Did you want us to discuss this in any more detail this evening, or?
Nope, I think that gives us a lot of good information. I just want to let people know that the town of planning board is working on our local comprehensive plan update, and we have a lot of mixed-use projects that's next on our agenda that we're going to be talking about. So this probably won't be something that you'll see on an agenda with the planning board until July. But we have plenty of time to process it before a special town meeting.
Okay.
Madam Chair, may I just add one thing?
Certainly.
On the issue of the boat possibly in any new amendment being, having to move it in the winter versus having it all summer is problematic. There, as someone just eloquently said, it's expensive. It's unreasonable, because if you're doing it in the summer, what's the difference in the winter, right? Again, I can only speak for myself, because I've had a boat, and no one's ever questioned our boats involved. So Yarmouth is different. They got different things. They think differently, that's clearly. But so I would hope that you could just please work that in. As I said earlier, no restrictions if it's done right. And also, anyone that's going to have a boat in their driveway has to adhere to the rules, like Alden does. He's a great example. And I'm sure there's many others. They have to. That's the way it should be. You have to have some kind of discipline. But these are very high-valued boats. They're very beautiful. Tell someone, move your boat in the winter. Where? The insurance on it. I use an example that may not be what you want to hear, but these people today, they buy an SUV Cadillac, park up in that driveway, and if you were to tell them, if you didn't have a garage, get it out of here in the winter, I think you'd have an issue. So that's my point.
Yeah,
I hope you can fit that into something.
We appreciate that, and we've heard that from a couple of other people. As we move forward in this process, you'll see some language as it progresses, and we'll appreciate your comments on that in the future. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Mr. Childs, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Our third item.
I don't have anything specific with regard to the accessory dwelling units. I just wanted to be sure to keep it in here because we were talking, this might be the first time the public is seeing the different types of zoning amendments that we'll be looking at for special town meeting. So I don't have anything further on ADUs at this time.
I did want to mention one thing. Sandwich at their town meeting did approve a bylaw amendment that's their, matchup
Action, okay.
to the state. I have not seen it, but I did read in the paper that they, at town meeting Monday, I believe, Monday night.
Was it addressed at Dennis last night? There was one other town, so I'm glad you brought that up, Madam
Sandwich,
Chair.
I think-
No, I know
Sandwich, I
Sandwich
think,
did. I'll have to do another little
Was
scan.
Monday.
Can I just ask a follow-up question, Madam Chair?
Yes, you may.
Has there been any, have you had more has town council's got lots of things to do?
I haven't been able to
Because
get
you're
back to
obviously
it.
got other things to do. But there's still the window of opportunity.
Correct.
Later in this year, and
Correct.
still to make the special town meeting
Yes, that's the goal.
milestones.
The local comprehensive plan is the number one goal of the select board, so I'm really concentrating on that. The regulations, the CMR that has been done by the state, the building commissioner is able to enforce the portions that are enforceable, but then not enforcing the sections that aren't enforceable. I'd like to get it corrected, so it's all in one place, so when people look at our zoning bylaw, they know what they can and cannot do, but we need to concentrate on the local comprehensive plan.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Saban.
Just a kind of a quick follow-up to that. In the meantime, we're enforcing what we can.
Yes.
What about the unenforceable stuff? How is he handling that?
Well, for example, owner occupancy, the owner resident can't do that, so somebody doesn't have to be that. We require 2 parking spaces. We can't require that. It's only 1 parking space, but if you're in half a mile of the transportation center, it's none. We can't require any. So there's some very specific things that were in there, but things like it can't be a short-term rental, that's still valid. We're allowed to make those distinctions. So that's something that is enforceable.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on our agenda, local comprehensive plan. Kathy?
I think we have Jeremy Lake, who is our consultant. Hopefully, he's been promoted to a analyst and has been given access to share his screen because he has some information. We're going to talk a little bit about what Union Studios is going to be doing for us with the mixed use. We've talked to BSC Group, and you'll see in your packet an upgraded benchmarking that they did. They also included a 9th benchmarking from some information that Peter sent with regard to a property in Dennisport. But then Union Studios is going to take that information and kind of move forward with the project. He's going to go over that a little bit. Hopefully Jeremy is there.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, there you are.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. All right, Kathy, do you want me to jump right in?
I would love you to jump right in, my friend.
Awesome.
We all love that.
I will start by saying thank you all for your service. As board members, I don't think people say thank you enough, and I was a witness to Lobstergate earlier, and I know it can be a little bit difficult and challenging, but appreciate what you guys do. It really is, it's a big public service, again, that most people don't really appreciate the work that you guys put in, so thank you for doing so. So let me jump in. I wanted to start by sort of introducing who we are and again, sort of have a bit of a discussion about the effort that we have coming soon. With that, I'm going to request that I can share my screen. And once I can share my screen, I'll call up just a quick little set of slides I wanted to run through.
So hopefully Liam is doing that for you.
Yeah, it looks like it just came through. So let me pull this up. And so just let me know when you guys can see that title slide. Looks like it's working.
Not yet, here.
It says that it's paused. So that means
It's changed color. Still can't see it.
it's working. It's trying to do it.
It's trying.
This reminds me of the DSL internet days. You got to even I was trying to give him a little more credit than dial-up, but of course, no one else in this room younger than us knows what we're talking about. But that's besides the point.
If for some reason it doesn't work, I have the slides here up on our
Okay.
screen. I don't know if you can see us, but you can tell me when to change the slide to forward it.
Okay. I'm going to try one more time real quick, and if it doesn't work, we'll definitely go that route. Give it. If you've got them up, though, I can certainly go that route, too.
Yeah, I just don't know if you can see them when I have them up.
Let's see. I can. I think I can see him, so I think we'll be in good shape there.
Oh, I think Liam showed the screen, so perfect. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so just let me know when you need me to switch it around.
Perfect. Well, we can go ahead and you can advance to the first one. And I'll just lead off by saying, good evening. My name's Jeremy Lake. I'm a principal at Union Studio Architecture and Community Design. We're a almost 25-year-old practice at this point. We were founded in 2001. I've been there for about 12 or 13 of those years. We are based in Providence, Rhode Island, but we also have a small office in Philadelphia as well. And we have 36 employees who are a mix of architects, planners, and designers. You can go ahead to the next slide. And our mission is to use the power of design to enrich lives and strengthen communities. Go ahead to the next one. And this is just sort of a smattering of our portfolio. We work on a wide range of architectural and community neighborhood design type projects. I will say the majority of our work tends to center around housing in all shapes, sizes, and forms, including mixed use. And we also do community design, everything from little pocket neighborhoods up to town centers, and doing stuff like this, working with communities on trying to envision how to, either incorporate density or, understand how things like form-based codes are working or aren't working. So we're really excited to be a part of this. And I'll just highlight on this particular set of images, a couple of these are mixed use. The upper right-hand corner, that's Westminster Street here in Providence. Our office is actually the second floor of the little two-story black structure in the middle there. But we were part of a big revitalization effort on some of these existing older buildings. And actually the building in the foreground is a new building that we designed that, again, is residential over commercial. But the image in the bottom center there is Hammett's Wharf. That's a new boutique hotel over commercial in Newport. So again, we're familiar with mixed use, a lot about the issues, challenges, and possibilities that it allows for. You want to go ahead to the next image? I also wanted to share, even though we're in Providence, we have done a lot of work out on the Cape, continue to do a lot of work out on the Cape. I've just, again, included a number of examples here, everything from some cottages in Dennisport. We have a couple single-family 40B communities. They're Maritime Landing, Brewster Landing. The lower right is Sea Captain's Row, which are some small multifamily types that we did in Hyannis. And the lower left is actually an example of a mixed-use structure that's on Main Street in Hyannis. That was a conversion, a commercial building that was converted to residential over commercial space. So again, we're not on the Cape, but we're out there quite frequently and working on a variety of projects out there. Go ahead to the next one. And by the way, at any point, feel free to interrupt me if you have questions or comments. I don't mind that. I thought I would also share just two efforts we've done in recent years that I think lend themselves to this effort, and I think will help you visualize some of what we're probably about to do here in the coming weeks. The first was an effort called Community Resiliency by Design. This was an effort we did with the Cape Cod Commission a couple of years ago. This was a pre-COVID effort. You can go ahead to the next slide. And really what this was about was the Cape Cod Commission was interested in trying to start illustrating the idea of incorporating moderate sort of levels of density, because they know with the housing crisis that's out there, and as towns are trying to figure out how to incorporate more housing, how do you do so in ways that still feel sympathetic and like it belongs in the various villages around the Cape. And this is a diagram we generated that tried to illustrate this range of types that really slot anywhere between a single family home on the left end there and a typical multifamily building on the right end. Zoning historically really just kind of broke everything into those two very simple categories. And the reality is there are all these types that were really prevalent pre-World War II, including some examples on the Cape. It's kind of hard to find many just because not a lot of development happened on the Cape prior to World War II. But these things exist out there, and we were going around and working with a number of communities just talking about this issue, trying to get ahead of some of the zoning changes and things that the commission knew was going to be coming down the pike. If you go ahead to the next slide. With that effort, we did a number of visualizations like we were going to be doing here with you guys. So again, we in the first three towns we worked with, Falmouth, Eastham, and Orleans, identified some properties where we thought we could do a little bit of a sort of illustrative test fit, showing the types we were talking about. And a number of these also were, on their Main Street mixed-use corridors. And so sometimes we illustrated mixed use as a potential portion of what those might look like. And these three examples illustrated, densities in the range of 10 to 15 to 20 units to an acre, which is comparable to the densities you guys actually allow for in your village center overlay district. You can go ahead to the next one. An additional town we worked with was South Sandwich with that effort, and they had the town owned a big parcel of land in South Sandwich and wanted us to kind of, again, show what could be done if you deployed these types there. And one of the things I just wanted to illustrate, the red zone that was out by the road, out by the existing grocery store that was next door. We were talking about how almost any one of these typologies, again, we were talking primarily about residential, but in almost any of those types, you could imagine if there's commercial on the ground floor, that really is what becomes, that sort of village scale mixed use that I think all of us are wishing and hoping would be the sorts of things that would turn up in context like Route 28 here in Yarmouth. Go ahead to the next one. And then a much more recent effort that is much more directly applicable to what we're talking about here with you guys. Just a year ago in West Chatham, we were working with them on some visualizations. Go to the next slide. They similarly had a mixed-use district. In this case, they are contemplating allowing a new form-based code to try to promote mixed-use development in this portion of town that they've identified as the West Chatham Neighborhood Center District. We were asked to review the proposed form-based code, do some visualizations to help the broader community understand what was being suggested in those regulations, because this was going to have to go to town vote. And so obviously they want to make sure people could really understand. Most people don't have any sense of zoning regulations or what any of these things imply. And similar to what we're talking about here, we had identified 3 sites that are highlighted in orange that were in that district that kind of represented a spectrum of some of the conditions that we expected to see there. You can go ahead to the next slide. Some of those were not really all that developed current. Some were largely already pre-developed. Some were on a corner condition, some were narrow and deep. And again, the idea, if you go ahead to the next slide, was we looked at those in a couple of different scenarios in terms of one that's purely mixed use, one that might be mixed use in front with some residential beyond. The one in the middle even suggests the potential of there being some single-story commercial in front with the residential in back, so still mixed use overall as a parcel, maybe not building by building, but still I think largely achieving what the goals and objectives of that were. And again, through this process, highlighted a few of the things that were in their proposed form-based code that we thought were a bit of a challenge, things like the building heights and some of the other requirements for parking, et cetera, and just fostered a bit of a conversation with them about that. But again, ultimately the goal here was that they would be able to utilize these visualizations as part of their ongoing outreach with the broader community. Next slide. So that brings us here to you guys in Yarmouth here, the mixed-use study along Route 28. Next slide. Obviously, your village center district is a much broader area than the West Chatham area was, but it's the same kind of idea, right? There is this commercial strip that comes through. Currently, isn't as mixed as we wish it could be. Great opportunity for adding some residential that's desperately needed in all of these communities. Conditions of sort of the intensity of commercial along that route, but really often you almost transition immediately into single-family residential just beyond it. So how are you sensitive to some of those conditions? Even the presence of Swan Pond and some of the more, the wetter areas that are behind it to the north. There's a variety of conditions that are out here as well. Not to mention the fact that you guys actually have these sort of sub-districts within the village center. So the VC1, the VC2, the VC3, the VC4, how do we think about those and maybe talk about how things might be slightly different between each of those districts as an illustrative example. Go ahead to the next slide. In terms of our process, I think you guys are aware of some of these milestone dates. Because of the grant we are working with, we really have to get our effort done by the end of June, basically in 2 months. So these are just sort of the high-level deadlines or milestones that we know we have before us. We kicked it off last week. I came out and walked the site and talked to town staff about the effort. We're here tonight to talk to you guys, have a preliminary discussion about what we're thinking about showing, but definitely want to get your input before we put pencil to paper. We'll be back in front of you guys again on June 4th, but in the interim between now and then, we will certainly be meeting with town staff to review some of the things that we're coming up with, the draft schemes that we're showing for these illustrative sites, also some of our recommendations around how you might modify the zoning. Importantly, I should note part of our team is the Horsley Witten group who helped write the Village Center Overlay District guidelines that you guys passed a couple of years ago. And so we think it'll be great having their insights, having already been involved with a lot of the conversations that happened previously. So they'll be involved in all of these steps moving forward. So we'll be back in front of you June 4th to talk about what we've come up with and to get your further feedback and input. In mid-June, we plan on hosting a panel discussion, primarily with people that are involved in development locally, to really get their feedback and input on what the hurdles they see are, what some of the challenges are, to show them even what we've come up with to kind of get a little bit of their input. And then we'll be back in front of you at the end of June on the 25th to present all of the above, what we've heard, what we've seen, what we've found out, hopefully to help inform your next steps. So you can go ahead to the next slide, which is sort of the last slide. So here, what we've started to show, I know Kathy was in front of you guys at your last meeting talking about this idea of illustrating a range of opportunities by showing sort of 3 different sites. Again, the goal here is to make these a little bit generic. We don't want to confuse anybody that we are literally proposing a new project on some of these properties. So the idea here was to try to base these on conditions that we see fairly frequently up and down the village center, but to sort of make them a little less specific, but I still think very informative and very instructive in terms of showing some of the options or some of the challenges that we might see here. I think as Kathy talked to you, one of the ideas was to do a 1 acre site, a 2 acre site, and a 3 acre site, again, to show how there's a range of different things that become possible as you get a little bit more ground. There aren't a lot of sites that are larger than 3 acres. There certainly are some, but we thought 1, 2, and 3 were certainly representative of the majority of conditions we might expect to see out there. We also tried to differentiate the 3 of them with some of the other things that might impact what we draw or show for these contexts. So for instance, the 1 acre site is what we're calling sort of an interior lot. That's just one of several, lots that are marching down Route 28 that are sort of mid-block. They aren't necessarily on a corner condition, but are just somewhere in the middle. Whereas you can see on the other 2 sites, we're showing this idea of them being potentially on a corner, which creates its own set of challenges and opportunities. Now you have sort of 2 frontages. So how do you address those sites differently? How do you think about those a little bit differently? Between the 2 sites that are corner conditions, the middle one, the 2 acre site, we tried to think of it as maybe there's a site where both the Route 28 frontage, but also the frontage on the side street still has largely commercial uses across from it. So there might be pressure to think of both of those edges still as mixed use. Whereas in the third scenario, the 3 acre lot, we know there's plenty of areas where the current commercial lot might be fairly deep, but really the pressure on the commercial development is right up on Route 28. And when you get off on some of these side streets, it actually transitions pretty quickly to residential. So maybe there's a condition here where the pressure on commercial is in front, but the direction and back might want to go a little bit more purely residential. Some of the other differences we tried to highlight, maybe as we saw on the north side of Route 28, there's plenty of lots that back right up to the woods and the wetlands all along the sort of Swan Pond area. So maybe in one of them we would show what it would be like if it backed up to a natural area, whereas the other 2 show the more common condition where you have residential single-family homes generally just behind the commercial properties. We thought we would vary the districts that they're in, so one's in VC1, one's in VC3, one's in VC4. We left VC2 out just because that one doesn't require mixed use. It could be residential. And so since we were looking for 3 examples, we thought it made sense to focus on those other 3. And then the last thing I wanted to share is, as we've started to sort of brainstorm how we might try to then further differentiate what we're illustrating between the 3, and looking at these sort of conditions we've created in these hypothetical situations, it struck me that it's probably likely that the 1 acre site is where we will show an example where there's maybe a single mixed-use structure that's at the front of that site with all of the parking behind. The 2 acre site, again, that has commercial frontage on 2 sides, maybe that's a condition where we show multiple mixed-use structures, some of them on Route 28, some of them off on the side road. And on the 3 acre site, again, because of the condition where it transitions really to residential once you turn up on the side road, maybe that's one where we show this idea of there being commercial structures in the front of the site and residential structures more towards the back of the site, so that individual structures aren't mixed use, but the overall site includes a mix of uses. And then lastly, thinking through, one of the things I know your VCOD regulations allow for is really a range of mix of how much commercial, how much residential. So again, we would like to try to explore, showing 3 different ranges of that between the 3. So one thought I had on the 1 acre site was to maybe suggest, thinking if that's a 3-story building, if the ground floor was commercial and the 2 upper floors were residential, you'd have a mix that is essentially 33% commercial and 67% residential. On the 2-acre site, if we maybe imagine that the two buildings wrapping the corner are both at 2 stories, it doesn't always have to push the limits of the height. Maybe we think of it being 50% commercial, 50% residential, the commercial on the ground floor of those buildings, residential above. And then lastly, on the 3-acre site, if we have some commercial buildings up front but really have purely residential towards the back, maybe that's one that just skews a little bit more towards the residential program. I think the maximum allotment is something like 85% residential on these sites. And so I said, maybe let's imagine this is 75% residential with 25% commercial. So again, the idea here is to try to capture, there's a number of variables that are at play. So how do we illustrate that sort of range of options just to spark some conversation, and even for us as we go through the exercise of looking at the zoning code and trying to test these various limits. If we're doing the same thing on all 3 sites, we might not see some of the challenges that come out by testing ourselves by trying to run a variety of scenarios here. So really that's where we're at, and that's what we're hoping to kind of do moving forward. But again, wanted to take an opportunity tonight to talk that through with you all, see if the approach we're taking for these 3 case studies makes sense, if there's other things you think we should be thinking about, or other suggestions about how we're maybe deploying, which are more commercial, more residential, et cetera. Tonight would be really great to understand that before we jump in and start drawing things up. So with that, I welcome comments, questions you all might have. And Kathy, please too, if there's anything else I have forgotten or other considerations we've talked about, feel free to throw those out there too.
Thank you, Jeremy. We really appreciate your time this evening. Members of the board, any comments or questions at this point? I'd like to compliment the effort so far, Jeremy. Just the simple visualization of it helps a lot in terms of looking at Route 28 as having these typical kind of parcels that we can look at in various different ways. I appreciate the fact that you've mixed up the mix, if you will, from 33 up to 50, and that the idea of being very cognizant to the fact that many of these commercial properties, as you know, immediately transition into residential. There's little room for a buffer there. So, but I appreciate your efforts so far. From my view, I think you're pretty much on target for what we were expecting at this point. Kathy's nodding her head. I'm not sure if you can see her, but I would welcome any other comments from board members.
Madam Chair, I'll just jump
Mr.
in
Smith.
and say the same thing. Jeremy, great next step that you've taken us. Just this last slide, the visualization of what we're looking at, it really helps me to understand, and is not looking at something specific on Route 28, but looking at it as from a generic standpoint. So thank you.
Certainly.
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Slovak.
Since VCOD came in 2011, we now have, a water park and some of the other properties that have transitioned to other uses in VCOD. We had a hotel convert to 55 plus, and we had another motel convert to housing. Are you looking at what has changed since, because you brought up the VCOD part and how it might influence what you're doing, but have you looked at maybe how some of the uses maybe have changed from what maybe the original intentions of VCOD was?
I certainly think town staff have started to alert us to some of those issues, and I think as we, review the regulations as they're written, we'll be counting on the town staff to help us understand, like, here are some conditions we weren't even imagining coming up that we started to see. Or I think what's very telling is already what you're seeing in the couple you've listed is that really the real pressure right now is on residential, the need for residential, less so than for commercial. I think one of the issues that we see come up when we have these conversations is everybody sort of hopes and dreams that these things will somehow maximize all this commercial potential out there, but the market demand right now is really more so for residential. And so I think we'll hear a lot of that when we have some of those conversations with the local development community and some of the challenges of delivering these kinds of projects. So again, I think we're aware those trends are out there and happening. And I think to the degree we need to address some of those things, maybe in some of the comments we make about the zoning and the recommendations for that, we should be thinking about what's actually been happening in the last couple of years as illustrative to those issues.
But I think we're trying to slow that trend. I think, a bit, right? That's, we're not abandoning this mixed-use commercial.
No, the whole idea is
no,
the
no.
opposite.
So that's why I'm saying, even though those trends point towards, obviously, housing as a need and an investor interest, but I mean, that's, not what we're looking to continue.
Yeah, and Kathy highlighted to me early on that, the way the regulations are currently written, the minimum commercial that's required is 15%. You could go 85% residential, 15% commercial, and there's some concern that that might be too low. And so I think one of the things we'll test out looking at these different things is, what is the impact of that? That's why the one tries to skew a little more heavily on residential with a little bit of commercial. But even at 25%, if we can show you what that might look like, might that give you some comfort that, okay, as long as it's in the right place, I think that the regulations are clear too, that, the priority for that is on Route 28. That's what makes sense. That's what you're really trying to reinforce, is that as, the mixed use district. And really, once you get off of that, I think there's a lot less pressure for it to unnecessarily force more commercial out there than at least holding up that edge. So again, I think that's one of the things we will be talking to you about and trying to understand is, as written or with some modification, do we still make sure we're achieving that goal for you guys, but without going so far as to create conditions that are further, hindering, developers from coming in and making the changes you want to see done too, right?
I do think we did a good thing when we changed the level of density that's allowed. So if you had a purely residential project, it's only 8 units per acre. But if you have mixed use, you can get up to 16 units per acre. So that alone in the zoning bylaw was really encouraging people to go mixed use. We had a much higher, and this is like something where Nate might want to look at the zoning bylaw from Horsley Witten, because we have made some changes over the years and modified those things, because originally the minimum percentage of commercial was higher. And we're like, we weren't getting a lot of projects, so we're like, well, maybe we can lower that a little bit to see if we can get some additional projects. But having that cookie, so to speak, of increased density when you have mixed use, I think the whole idea was to promote mixed use projects.
Any other comments, questions from the board? Again, Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We look forward to seeing you again in the very near future.
Indeed. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Good night now.
For your patience.
Jeremy.
Yep. Thanks. Bye.
Okay.
Item number 3, Madam Chair.
No, we're still on 2.
Oh, no.
We have Kathy.
Apologies.
Kathy, did you write these notes like at midnight?
No, I did them.
You mean this? We're on
These
this
are
part
notes
now?
from our meeting last night.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we had a great meeting with the select
It was-
board, and Deirdre came, as did Susan and Joanne, and they wanted to stop after each key issue and action items in order to have a discussion with us. Thank you. So that's kind of where I think we got the most feedback we've probably gotten early on in a long time on projects versus, we kind of come to them with kind of a final draft, and then you're getting hit with a bunch of different things. So this was, I think, a really good time to come before them with an update. I think overall they really felt that we were on track. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
And that they really felt that it was a nice holistic approach. And obviously, as we talked there, everything is intertwined. It's not like housing here and economy here. Everyone understands how tightly everything is put together. So I just wanted to summarize some of the things that came out of the meeting. I don't know, I think it's late and maybe we don't want to go through all of them, but I wanted to make sure that you had them and that Jeff Bagg from BSC Group had them, so that we can start looking at, incorporating them into it. It was a great conversation, and they had some really good suggestions. So I think there's definitely things that we're going to be making changes to in order to incorporate these comments.
Spent a fair amount of time, just a quick one, on primarily Mark Forrest spent a considerable amount of time and expressed interest in the historic importance of Yarmouth.
Yep.
And was pleased that we have at least several action items associated with projects that will be addressing the historic importance of Yarmouth. He spent a fair amount of time on that. And we were pleased to see that. The one item that I'm not sure what to expect, but Tracy Post, when we were discussing housing, said that she will have a lot to say about this. I believe that's what she said, something like that.
Yeah, she did, but I think one of her main comments had to do with a lot of people don't want to be landlords because there's such strong tenants' rights in the state of Massachusetts. So a lot of people during COVID weren't able to collect rent. It made it more difficult for people to see this as well, I can do short-term rental, and there's not as much difficulty getting people out or moving forward. You get the money. You can also use the property at different times of the years yourself because you own it versus renting it out year-round. And if you have a great tenant, it can be a great situation, but if you have a bad tenant, it can be a long and costly process to address that issue. And that's, I think, was what she was trying to get at with her comments. She may have more on housing in general, but that was her main comment.
Yeah, so we may hear more from her.
The one thing that Mark Forrest did mention that plays into our mixed-use conversations is he really thought that the Affordable Housing Trust could be more aggressive in promoting mixed use with actual cash. So I thought that was great because we're looking for incentives. Maybe it's throwing some money at it with regard to the Affordable Housing Trust having that funding. So
the other comment that and it's in your notes, Kathy, but inland, the flooding, like at Captain's Village and other places, after a very bad rainstorm.
Yeah, that is a little bit of a problem because, when you do stormwater drainage, you design it for a certain storm event. You don't design it for the worst storm event that's ever going to be because it would be very, very expensive to do so. But what he was saying is with climate change, we're finding that we're having these higher frequency storms happening more on the regular, and that causes some at least temporary flooding before the infiltration system has a chance to catch up and the water can go away. To try and change a lot of these stormwater drainage systems to handle higher storm frequencies is going to be significant money. So that's something that if that's what we want to do, then we need to start investing more money in our stormwater CIP.
Next on our agenda are any update on Matakees, any meetings that have been held, or Kathy, maybe you have some?
I would just say that the Matakees Utilization Committee itself is meeting tomorrow night at 6 o'clock in Conference Room A, and one of the items that we're going to be talking about is a potential survey to kind of get some general public on some of the ideas that were created from all the different land use teams, and also maybe get some policy questions about what's important to people. Is it economic development with regard to direct tax revenue? Is it indirect? All these different types of things, and then also gauging some people's feelings on all the different concepts and ideas that came out of the brainstorming and all the land use teams' work.
Right.
Yes. Any other Matakees updates? None. Okay. And we don't have any meeting minutes.
I'm so far behind.
Kathy was busy writing notes from last night.
Forgive you.
Committee updates? Since our last meeting?
I have one, but are there others?
I just want to make my usual announcement.
Go ahead,
There are
Jim.
plenty of boardwalk planks available for sale. Yarmouth.ma.us, planks, buy a plank.
I would like to note to people that people who have purchased them maybe in the last month or so, I'm not exactly sure when those are going to get installed. I'd like to see if we couldn't coordinate something with Robert B. Auer to have them install them, but we've kind of passed the time where we can incorporate them into the boardwalk at the first go-around because they're already done. The boardwalk's pretty much done. So it would be extra work for them to go take those planks out and then put the other ones in. So, but I'd like to see if we can't get them to do it. Otherwise, we might have to wait until we own it outright after the completion of the construction and have the DPW install them.
But don't let that discourage you.
No.
Still go ahead and purchase them.
If I get enough of them, I'm going to try and get them done.
And I guarantee you, when you see it, you're going to go, wow. The site, we did a quick walk last week, and it's pretty nice, in my opinion.
Good job. Good job.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Committee updates.
Mr. Rubenstein.
The RAC committee met on Monday, the 5th, and there were a couple of updates from that. Work continues with the state of Massachusetts with DEP to, evaluate Bayberry Hills. There hasn't been tons more progress, but there is progress. That's kind of how that process is going. I think it's fair to say there will be a partnership between the sewer project and Bayberry Hills. It's just a question of how much and when. So that continues. The second thing is, if anybody's driven down Buck Island Road, you may have noticed that our new facility there's stuff happening. Lots of earth being moved and other fun things. Also exciting things like electrical and ducts and duct banks and site grading. But it's all going. It's all happening. A couple other updates that kind of involve what's happening this spring and this summer that I just wanted to share. The work behind the Pancake Man, there's a big old pump station going in right behind the Pancake Man, between the Pancake Man and the CVS. There's a big spot there. That is going to continue throughout the summer. That particular pump station, as you can imagine, because it's a big one.
Plus it's off property.
Sorry?
It's not on a road or in the road layout.
The
It's
good
on
news is it's
private-
not going to
yeah.
necessarily.
That's how it used to be.
Yeah. There you go. It's not going to necessarily prevent it. I think the road closures are done on Long Pond, which, thank goodness. But that is going to continue. That's contract 2. Contract 3 by Rivoli is that allegedly South Shore Drive is going to be paved by May 16th, and that all the work on 28 and South Shore Drive is supposed to be either finished or shut down before Memorial Day. However, some of the side streets off of South Shore Drive, and there is a pump station down there as well, are going to continue during the summer. That is unavoidable. Contract 4, which is close to Madam Chair's house. Just have to
Close
call
enough.
Have to call it what it is. The good news is that
yards away.
the sewer well, I was trying to be vague. The sewer installation work on 28 is done, including 28 and Old Main. But we're still working, as Madam Chair knows, and any other folks who have tried to drive down there, is Station Ave and North Main Street. That's still all... It's
closed.
It's all happening. It's all happening down there. I'm sorry to say.
So the bridge closures are over.
That's my understanding, yes. And until, of course, the actual bridge replacement project begins, which is scheduled for after Labor Day, right.
Actually,
So-
just a point of clarification.
Please, Madam
The
Chair.
bridge is not closed.
No.
It was.
It was for a little while.
Access to the
no?
bridge.
Yeah, you could, from both sides.
Okay.
Access was restricted, I believe.
Oh, was it?
Access to those who know how to get around.
Okay. Stand corrected.
I can't tell you how many FedEx and UPS trucks passed in front of my house.
Right.
And ambulances and school buses, appropriately so. I didn't have a problem with it, but the bridge has been open.
Right.
Anyway.
Yes, until it's restricted in the fall.
Oh, yeah, well, there'll be
It will be
different.
heavily restricted.
Yeah,
Yes.
but still open.
Right. But that's a separate project run by
Yes,
a
it is.
separate organization, our friends from the state. Speaking of our friends from the state, we have asked MassDOT, the contractors have asked them to continue some 28 work for about another month. That's actually similar to last year. We may not remember this, but there was work on 28 till about the 20th of June, roughly. The state had to give a waiver because of the Memorial Day rule. They may do it again, they may not. We didn't know by the time of the meeting. Basically, until school gets out,
Yeah.
there might be work on 28. But that will still be before, the majority of our summer friends arrive. So there's that. Quickly looking ahead to the next 2 contracts, there has been no progress on pump station number 2, which is by the Cranberry Bog, which is contract 6. We're not yet in any danger of sort of slowing down the entire phase 1 yet. We'll see. But we're assured there is still lots of dialogue from the town administration and with the property owner as it relates to contract 6. Contract 5, though, is actually in progress, and we're actually going to have bids opened in a couple of weeks. It looks like, sorry, to be clear, June 5th. However, just interesting, we all think, well, the tariff situation, that's not going to affect our sewer project. Well, you might be wrong because, believe it or not, some of the pumps that we need to buy, well, they come from not the United States. I'll just put it that way. So we're finding a little bit of we're a little bit intrigued as to how those bids are going to come in now, given where we are in the world of tariffs and the pressures that the manufacturers are under, which in turn puts the pressure on our friendly bidders. So we shall see. I think
Contract 5 is?
Contract 5 is Parker's River to Higgins Kroll on 28.
Okay.
So it's sort of well, there you go. I already said where it was. So we won't know until June 5th. Unfortunately, that's after our next meeting. But I'm sure, if we hear lots of loud noises coming from Town Hall or from the DPW office, then we'll know that the bids were a lot higher than we thought. But let's hope not. We've been given no indication that we have any issues with keeping under our $207 million. Last thing we discussed, and this is an ongoing conversation, is about Phase 2 and the where and the when and how it all connects to all the other issues in our town, whether it relates to the new proposed project behind the senior center, what the muck is mucking about, the possible new school building stuff, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess what I'm here to say is our chair, Mr. Mitrakostas, I believe is going to come to the select board pretty soon to start explaining that, thanks to the creation of the RAC, as Ken knows, what's great about it is it's got planning, it's got conservation, it's got finance. A lot of us are coming together because it's such a town-wide issue. And we're all sort of saying, this is what we're working on, not to mention the LCP. And finance is saying, well, this is where we have concerns. And conservation is saying, well, this is where we have concerns. And I think we're all realizing that as an advisory committee, as you know, Ken, there's only so much we can do, but at least we're ringing the bell here about Phase 2, because it's to be determined where it's going to be in relation to the maps that we all looked at 5-6 years ago, and certainly how we're going to pay for it, much less what it's going to cost. So I feel like the chair is taking the responsibility, as he is wont to do, to come to the select board to start saying, these are conversations that maybe need to be had at the select board level as well, because who else is flying at 20,000 feet? We do on the RAC about sewer, but we're also collecting all the different issues that are presenting themselves, and even the ones that we don't know about. So I think that's important to mention. And the very last thing that's disconnected to the meeting but connected to committee updates is I was asked and granted an appointment to the school building committee for the feasibility study as a parent of a new DY high school freshman in the fall, and also somebody who served on the previous school building committee, and as someone who cares a lot about the future of the district. It's not so much about the future of ME Small. This will be a conversation, I can assure you, that will be about the entire school district and the future of, let's just say, the many hundreds of thousands of square feet that the school district uses, and how is it best to use them. So I'm looking forward to those conversations, and I appreciate you giving me the chance to mention it.
Thank you.
And that's enough. Thank you.
Any other staff updates or correspondence, Kath? You want to share with us? Okay. Just a reminder on meetings. Our next meeting will be May 21st. Then we have 3 in June. 4, 18, and 25.
Madam Chair, may I fill in a committee update that I forgot about?
Oh, certainly.
Has nothing to do with the boardwalk, interestingly enough. The Design Review Committee met yesterday and reviewed a project at 55 Route 28 Becker's Package Store for a mixed-use project that will create 2 two-bedroom apartments and redo the liquor store section of the building. And we found that favorably yesterday, so that'll go to its next stage. That's all.
I'll add that as an abutter, I got notification about the gas station project down here. The
J-Mart?
J-Mart is going forward, I guess.
Good.
It was coastal. It was
You mean a ZBA?
stormwater. No, storm. Kathy, what would I got?
Yeah, it's just
Stormwater
probably the
management?
stormwater management permit with the Conservation Commission.
That has mixed use in it, if I
Yes.
recall.
Yes.
Yeah. So it all ties back
With
into
the
the
road
things
bylaw.
we were talking, well, I just meant it ties into what we were talking
Yep.
about earlier.
That's one of the cases, not a mixed-use building, because they had that at
Mixed-use.
one point, but it's a mixed-use site.
Site.
Right. Right, thank you
Got
for the
separate-
clarification. Yeah.
Separate apartments on the side. Anything else? May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.